This young man awakened a skill that the world deemed absolutely useless. But what they couldn't possibly fathom was that this power held truly limitless potential. Our main character, Jong Sang Wu, awakened the ability to clone himself. But what good could that possibly do for a chubby guy like him? Apparently, nothing at all. Defeated, he headed back home. He made a living by playing a popular game and selling his in-game achievements. Intrigued by his new power, Sang Wu decided to give it a test run. He focuses his mind, and a clone pops into existence, completely naked. For the very first time, he got a clear look at how his little brother was hidden beneath all that belly fat. Touching another guy felt incredibly strange, but since it was technically his own body, he figured it wasn't a big deal. He tells the clone to get dressed, ready to test its obedience. Sang Wu commands the clone to kneel and stand up repeatedly. Just as he expected, the pudgy copy was gasping for air after only 5 reps. A weak clone like this was completely useless. He felt his life was over. But then, a system window materialized, informing him his vitality had increased by 0.01. 1 month later, this was Sang Wu's body. He was running so relentlessly that the regulars at the local park began to whisper amongst themselves. They thought that dude just wasn't right. But the truth was, the real Sang Wu was relaxing at home. In a mere 30 days, he had shed 20 kilograms. He had uncovered some incredible secrets about his ability. The exhaustion and pain his clones felt didn't transfer to him at all. If a clone pushed itself past its limits and died, it would simply vanish into thin air. And the most amazing part, he absorbed all the positive stat gains from his clones, and they always spawned in his current, improved physical form. He could even command them telepathically. His slave number 1 was out on a run when it suddenly received a mental order to drop and start doing push-ups. And finally, clones are unable to create more clones. If they could, the world would probably be overrun by billions of them. Sang Wu forced his clone to train for an entire month without a single moment of rest, dramatically boosting his stats and transforming his appearance. But a man can't survive on training alone while his savings dwindle. Sang Wu needed a job to bring in some cash. He comes up with a brilliant plan: get a job and bring his clone along to earn double the wages. His clone number 1 will pose as a regular person named Gongo. As it turns out, one of the workers is an acquaintance of our protagonist. So Sang Wu smoothly explains that he just brought a friend along to work with him. The acquaintance, Dio Keel, directs them to check in at the main building. Sang Wu's heart pounds in his chest. It's his first time trying something so audacious. Surely this couldn't be a crime, right? After all, if he's putting in double the work, it's only fair that he gets double the pay. After just a few hours, our boy was getting a harsh lesson in the life of a manual laborer. Unlike him, his clone was grinding relentlessly. The clone works until it breaks. So even when it's completely exhausted, the damn thing simply refuses to stop. He realizes it would be a huge problem if Clone 1 suddenly died in front of everyone. He definitely wouldn't get paid then. By the end of the day, Sang Wu was the one who felt like he was on death's door. His clone was probably wondering if it would become the new original if that happened. Mr. Diochil brought the boys a drink, genuinely impressed by how hard the young men were working. He was amazed to see such dedication in today's youth. The reality, however, was that Sang Wu wouldn't be here at all if his bank account wasn't about to hit 0. The man casually asked which university our protagonist attended. And when he heard it was Gyeongguk, Mr. Diochil's respect for the kid grew even more. He sighed, wishing his own daughter had Sang Wu's smarts, so she could get into a top university like that. Our protagonist then replies, "It's not that difficult, really. With just a little studying, she could definitely do it." Hearing this, the man offers our hero a new job on the spot. He's to become his daughter's private tutor and cram knowledge into her head. No matter what it takes, Diochil even offers him an incredible rate. Because a good father will do whatever it takes to secure his child's future. The next day, Sang Wu woke up to an agonizing, full-body ache from actually working. He thought, if the clones feel this kind of pain, maybe I should ease up on them a bit. He mentally commands his slave number 1 to return home, since it can't work for more than 24 hours straight without raising suspicion. Now that he'd shown his clone a moment of mercy, it was time to relax and grab a meal. A short while later, the clone arrived back home. Sang Wu ordered it to take a shower. It had more work to do. With Clone 1 all freshened up, Sang Wu wanted to experiment. He prepared to prick the clone's fingertip with a needle. The reason was simple in this world. Certain abilities could be awakened through specific actions. One such power was regeneration. If he repeatedly injured his body and allowed it to heal, there was a chance he could awaken a high-level regeneration skill. Of course, inflicting that kind of pain on himself would be torture. So, the perfect solution was to experiment on his clones. Sang Wu hands Clone 1 a new phone. From this day forward, it must answer his calls. And whenever it's at home, it must be training relentlessly to forge a stronger vessel. Sang Wu decided it was time to conquer a new kind of dungeon, the gym. An old acquaintance spotted him, shocked. He joked that it looked like half of the old Sang Wu had vanished completely. Our protagonist replied that he was living a new life now and was literally on his way to sign up for a membership. His buddy's jaw dropped. What a ridiculous coincidence. He was also heading to a new gym, lured by rumors of a ridiculously hot instructor working there. He insisted Sang Wu come with him to check it out. The protagonist played along and signed up. But his true mission was far more strategic to send his clone here to grind stats every single day. His so-called friend was the classic attention seeker, the type who roars while lifting and needs all eyes on him. The acquaintance's awakened ability was strength, giving him a natural and impressive stat of 2.1. While he was trying to figure out the equipment, a call came in from Sang Wu's real friend, Dio. He was checking to see if he was all right, and if he was still on for the first tutoring session with his precious treasure. Sang Wu left the gym and headed for the man's home. And for the record, that musclehead didn't even join. Because surprise, surprise, the legendary female instructor didn't exist. Sang Wu considered himself lucky. Now, his clone could level up its stats in peace without any loudmouth distractions. When he arrived at Diokil's house, the noise booming from inside was intense. And when the man suddenly threw the door open, the pain level shot up too. Still, at least our protagonist finally laid eyes on Diokil's daughter. As it turns out, she really was a treasure. Sang Wu scratched his head, a thoughtful look crossing his face. Mr. Diokil was in a state of panic, apologizing over and over again for the door incident. A caring hand placed a small plate with a sliced apple on the table. It was Diokil's wife. She said she barely recognized the boy after his weight loss. He just explained that he'd been training hard since they last saw each other. As he wiped his mouth, his gaze shifted to the girl. Miss Han looked terribly nervous, her hands resting anxiously on her knees. She was blushing and looking at the floor, only answering when her name was called. The moment Sang introduced himself, her euphoric parents noticed her timid, blushing reaction, instantly believing she was smitten with the boy. In reality, Hyeon was dying of embarrassment, absolutely certain he must have heard her screaming through the door. The protagonist confirmed she was in her 3rd year and asked to see her grades. The girl's face went pale, as if she'd just seen a ghost. Sang Wu held her report card, trying his best to mask the shock as he looked over her academic record. It was a disaster. Her grades were a bloodbath of red marks, ranging only between a 6 and a 7. The parents looked utterly dumbfounded while the girl was so ashamed she didn't know where to hide. Diokil slowly stood, quietly gathered his things with that same shell-shocked expression, and then yelled that he was leaving for work, abandoning his wife to deal with the mess. Sang Wu finally looked up from the report card, shifting his gaze back to the girl. She was looking down, completely discouraged, with a face like a lost puppy. But with a reassuring smile, he told her it was no problem at all. He confessed that his grades weren't so great either, and that he knew plenty of tricks to turn things around. In that instant, the girl's face lit up like a festival of lights. She clasped her hands together, her eyes shining with renewed hope. Our hero declared they would reach their goal together, and they settled on 2 tutoring sessions a week. Later, back at Sang's place, we see his humble apartment from the outside. He stepped into his small home, thinking to himself that he still had such a long way to go. He thought back to his tutoring sessions, the scenes flashing through his memory. Hyeon proved to be incredibly dedicated and hardworking, absorbing every piece of advice he gave. He put his coat away, feeling lucky that she was much sharper than he expected. As he sat down at his computer, he realized that number 1 must have already left for work. He thought about the logistics. Giving his first clone a cell phone was simple enough. But if the number of clones increased, managing them all would become a massive headache. Sang Wu began browsing a site called Hunter Web, an online hub filled with dungeon guides, party finders, skill information, and a marketplace for hunters. His goal was to find a skill that could synergize with his own. He scrolled past countless ads, people desperately searching for skills, and scrolls being auctioned for insane prices. Then, his eyes landed on a price tag that made him do a spit take in utter shock. A skill was being sold for 100 million won. Another telepathic skill was listed for the low price of 400 million. He couldn't hold back the tears. If he had that kind of money, he'd buy a house, not a single skill. Leaning his head back in his chair, he let out a long, hopeless sigh. For him, saving up that kind of fortune felt like an impossible quest. He wondered if hunters really made that much money. He checked his bank account on his phone, only to be reminded of the vast, empty wasteland within it, throwing himself onto his bed in disgust. The protagonist felt like he just wanted the world to explode. But a dangerous thought began to creep into his mind. Maybe, just maybe, he should become a hunter. His screen floods with articles, tales of legendary hunters and their incredible feats. He rises to his feet, his mind racing, uncertain of the path he should take. Sang realizes his cloning ability is a gift, too powerful to be wasted on simple labor. With a newfound resolve, he grabs his coat, a new destiny calling to him. He dresses with purpose, his decision made. He was going to become a hunter. As if responding to his will, a strange energy surges through him, increasing his vitality. Back in the 2000s, portals to another world ripped open, and from them poured a tide of monsters. In the chaos, more than half the world's population perished. It seemed to be the dawn of humanity's extinction. But from the crucible of despair, humans with extraordinary powers began to emerge. They became humanity's shield, and on the front lines, they forged our victory. Now, in the year 2023, those who hunt the remaining threats are known by one-name hunters. Sang immerses himself in an online course, learning the steps to obtain his license and join their ranks. He jots down every crucial tip for conquering the infamous hunter exam and sets off for the Hunter Association. As he stretches, a realization dawns on him. Ever since he started cultivating his vitality, his body felt stronger, more alive, even with less sleep. He steps inside the association, and the air crackles with power. A masked swordsman with a blade on his back speaks with a shadowy weapons dealer. Another man, a mountain of muscle, bald and covered in scars, meticulously cleans the parts of a firearm. And in a dark corner, a suspicious old man in a wide-brimmed hat lurks like a phantom. Sang is in awe. This was a gathering of the world's most peculiar warriors. He notices something strange, though there are surprisingly few people here to take the test. A woman in uniform announces that registration will close in 20 minutes. He knows the test is in the basement, but a cold wave of anxiety begins to wash over him. He finally arrives at a door with a simple sign that reads, Hunter License. Test room. With a trembling voice, our protagonist pushes the door open and says, "Excuse me." He was not prepared for what he saw. Every single person inside radiated an aura of pure intimidation, or was just bizarre beyond belief. There were no exceptions. Sweat pours down his face as he wonders why so many powerful people are gathered here. Two sinister-looking men begin to snicker at his polite entrance. Heavy army boots approach with a thunderous rhythm. A hand, crisscrossed with scars, slams down on the table. The man is a C-class hunter named Han Mongan, and he will be the proctor for this license test. The test has 3 parts: written, practical, and aptitude. But his warning is chilling. Cheating is strictly forbidden, and they never forget the face of a cheater. The men who were just laughing at Sang immediately fall silent. The protagonist could feel it too. The proctor's killing intent was real. He understood instantly. The pressure in this room was suffocating. Looking out at all the participants, the instructor announces that the hunter license test will now begin. Far away, a car speeds down the street, the traffic flowing smoothly through the city. A person on a headset promises someone on the other line that they'll deposit everything before the month is over. The man on the headset is the car's driver, and he tells his boss to calm down, assuring him that he's no rookie at this job. But a furious scream erupts from the headset, making the poor guy's ear ache. The driver's name is Koang, and he works for the JM agency. He knows his boss is about to kill him. Money isn't flowing in, but the list of expenses keeps growing longer. He glances at his watch. It's 15 minutes to 8 o'clock. The hunter's exam is almost finished. He continues driving across a bridge as the setting sun bathes the entire city in orange light. A holographic screen materializes, announcing, "Pass." The arm belongs to Sang, who stares in utter disbelief, realizing he'd actually made it. Everyone had told him it was easy, but he never imagined it would be this easy. The written questions were simple memorization. They gave you plenty of time for the practical test, and the target was practically point blank. And the aptitude test felt more like a middle school ethics quiz, asking questions like whether he's ever thought about shooting someone. Sang wonders if it's really okay for the test to be this simple, especially for a job that involves life or death situations and deadly weapons. As he walks back home, he's deep in thought, his eyes drifting to the side. Looking up at a towering skyscraper, he thinks to himself, it seems like the government is truly desperate for more hunters. But with a sigh, he decides not to overthink it. Suddenly, he comes across a group of people, where men in sharp suits are handing out business cards. The men are impeccably dressed and groomed, exuding an aura of professionalism. They offer warm smiles as they hand the cards to passers-by. Sang instantly knew these were scouts from the guilds, trying to recruit new hunters. In the next moment, someone approaches him, offering a card and congratulating him on passing the exam. The card is from the JM agency, and it bears the name Seo Kang Junmo. He introduces himself, explaining that whenever Sang needs to buy an item or find a monster to hunt, their agency can help him for a small fee. A little awkwardly, our protagonist scratches the back of his neck and thanks him. Then, he opens his status screen, and what he sees there makes his eyes go wide. He felt a surge of power. His cloning skill had finally leveled up. It was now at level 2. Mid-sentence, Sang suddenly bolts, shouting over his shoulder that he'll call them later. His friend is left stunned, whispering for him not to forget his promise. Back at his apartment, Sang bursts through the door, breathless. He covers his face, struggling to contain his laughter. Pure ecstasy. He can now create 2 clones at once. With a single thought, his new clone materializes, just like the first. It appears in a puff of smoke. Now, 3 Sangs stand together. He looks to his newest creation. Clone number 2, I'm counting on you. He holds up the card from the JM agency. All right, boys, he declares. It's time to become hunters. Meanwhile, Junmo tosses a stack of cards onto his car seat. He'd finally handed out almost all of them. Adjusting his tie, he hoped for a call soon. Lost in thought. He stares at his reflection in the window, watching the city lights blur past. The scene shifts to a colossal skyscraper. The headquarters of the Hong Guild, Korea's number 1. Inside, a document lies on a desk, its information highlighted. A man sips from a mug, ordering the payment to be arranged according to the list. Junmo takes the document, nodding in agreement. But as his eyes scan the details, a seed of doubt is planted. The payment field lists the prices for slime fluid, horned rabbit horns, and troll fluid. A bead of sweat forms on his brow, holding the paper. He begins to ask a question, his voice laced with confusion. He saw that the numbers didn't add up. But before he could finish, the other man cut him off sharply. Junmo? With a condescending smirk, he asks, Hasn't it been a while since you joined Hong? Junmo can only confirm that it has. The man leans in, warning him to be sharp. Placing his mug down, he adds, If we do things by the book, there won't be any scraps left for us. He places a heavy hand on Junmo's shoulder, saying he knows he's an upright guy, but that there's no need to be so sensitive about the guild's services. Rage boils within Junmo, and his hand crushes the paper. But his superior, still smirking, just asks if he understands. Back in his car, Junmo seethes. If he knew it would be this corrupt, he would have just kept his mouth shut. Suddenly, a ringtone cuts through the silence. He quickly reaches into his pocket, pulling out his phone. He answers, identifying himself as Kong Junmo of the JM agency. On the other end of the line is Jong Sang Wu, who says they have something to discuss. Night has fallen over the city. We see the glowing sign of a cafe called Starlux, nestled in a shopping complex. Junmo steps inside, scanning the cafe for his client. Sang, sitting at a table nearby, raises a hand to greet him. Junmo apologizes for the wait, but Sang waves it off, saying he just arrived himself. Junmo asks if he'd like to get a drink. Seeing an employee at the register, Sang agrees. With a delicious-looking iced coffee between them, Junmo gets down to business. He confirms Sang wants a safe hunt, something a beginner can handle. Sang nods, his expression serious. So, Junmo asks the crucial question, what is his skill? Holding his coffee, our main character looks him dead in the eye and says, cloning. Junmo strokes his chin, pondering. He's heard of it, a skill that creates illusions. As Sang downs his coffee in one go, Junmo concludes that for a rookie who just makes fakes, it would be almost impossible for him to be useful in an actual hunt. Still, he puts on a smile, calls it a good skill, and slides a contract across the table. The first recommended hunt is in slime territory. They're not dangerous, but they release a toxic gas upon death, so masks are a must. Sang snaps a picture of the contract with his phone. This, he says with confidence, will be a piece of cake. The second option is the horned rabbits territory. You can hunt there for a long time, but since they're fast, making good money is tough. There are other low-class monsters, like giant rats, but these 2 are the only ones where he can guarantee Sang's safety. Our protagonist thinks both options sound pretty good, and the prices for the monster drops are decent. And so, Sang says he wants to proceed with the contract. With a professional smile, Junmo thanks the new hunter for his business. Junmo asks which of the 2 hunting grounds he'll choose. But suddenly, a third hand slams down onto the table, stamping the paper with a decisive thud. The sudden action shocks Junmo to his core. In that instant, he realizes this is no mere illusion. The stamp is lifted, revealing a perfect signature in red ink. Stunned, Junmo's head whips around to see who stamped the contract. And there he is. A second Sang together, they declare. When we said we liked both, we meant we're doing both. During another client meeting, a spiky-haired man carrying a massive sword talks with Junmo. He recalled hearing the man's ability was a form of cloning. A masked swordsman, face hidden from view, had confirmed it himself. When Junmo asked for a demonstration, the spectacle that unfolded left him absolutely breathless. The ninja sheathed his blade, and in an instant, a dozen copies surrounded him, each poised for a deadly strike. But a chilling feeling washed over Junmo. Something was terribly wrong. The clones then lunged forward, their blades aimed in a devastating synchronized attack. In a horrifying display, their swords seemed to plunge directly into the body of the original swordsman sitting calmly in his chair. A terrified Junmo shielded his eyes, unable to watch the carnage, pleading for them to stop. With tears welling up, his heart pounding in his chest, he peeked again. The ninja, impaled by a fake blade, simply explained that it was all an elaborate illusion. Nothing was real. Junmo tentatively reached for a sword, but his hand phased right through it. It couldn't inflict a single scratch. Still, the clones were perfect decoys for luring out monsters. The suffocating tension that gripped Junmo finally shattered, replaced by a wave of relieved laughter. But snapping back to the present, he knew. That memory was of a mere illusion. What he was witnessing now was something on a completely different level. Before his very eyes, Sang's double picked up the contracts with his own 2 hands, checking the terms. It even drank coffee like a man dying of thirst. A deep worry etched itself onto the man's face. He had never encountered an ability like this. Just to be sure, he ventured a guess, asking if they were perhaps twins. The question made Sang erupt in laughter, pointing to his copy. He chuckled that it was an understandable mistake. He then placed a firm hand on the clone's shoulder, proving its solid, physical form. Sang declared with absolute certainty that this person was, in fact, his clone. Junmo may have seen something similar before, but this copy was real. He even added that another one was currently training at the academy. Shocked, Junmo asked if the clones could even build muscle. The protagonist's answer was yes. When his clone gets stronger, so does he. It was possible to raise his stats through his copies. This wasn't some simple F-class skill. It held an ocean of terrifying potential. But putting that aside for a moment, Sang had a critical question about the hunting grounds. He needed to know if it was a problem for the same person to enter multiple hunting grounds at once. Junmo explained that simultaneous entry was almost impossible, as every hunter's entry is meticulously recorded. A grim expression fell over the boy's face. If that bureaucracy was real, it would be a massive roadblock for him. But the ever-helpful Junmo promised to speak with the association and asked Sang to come with him. Scratching his head, Sang agreed, but explained he couldn't use his ability again until the next afternoon because of its cooldown. So, Junmo proposed they meet in 2 days at the Hunter Center. With a hint of suspicion, he then asked about the contract. Stamp in hand, Sang revealed he'd already stamped it, having checked the percentage rates from a photo his second clone sent over. In a sudden move, the man shot up from his seat, startling poor Sang. Extending his hand, Junmo declared that he was looking forward to their partnership. With a far-off gaze, Sang reflected on this monumental step he had just taken. At last, they shook hands, sealing their fateful deal. The clone, however, remained completely indifferent, sitting silently as the 2 men forged their new alliance. 2 days later, outside the massive Hunter Center, our main character walked cautiously, scanning his surroundings. Someone called out "Hunter Nim," and he looked up, surprised. Junmo adjusted his tie, noting that Sang had arrived quite early. Sang explained he rushed over just in case. He then asked if this entire building was the Hunter Association. Junmo confirmed it, and they pulled a number from the ticket dispenser. The hall was enormous. A voice echoed, calling hunters one by one, until finally it was Sang's turn. The clerk asked if he was applying for dual access to the hunting grounds. She explained to our protagonist that he was the first person since the legendary Jumper to request such a thing. As expected, this was no ordinary request. Employees began frantically digging through mountains of files. After some time, the employee returned, directing him to the civil service office to handle the necessary documents. The sight that greeted them was a literal mountain of paper, leaving both Sang and Junmo staring at the colossal pile in disbelief. Junmo announced he would handle the paperwork, telling the boy to proceed to the skill demonstration room. He approached a counter with a female attendant and handed over the towering stack of forms. Meanwhile, Sang entered a room with a woman in a lab coat and a large, transparent chamber. Focusing his mind, he gathered a familiar cloud of energy, preparing to summon his clones. And just like that, a new Sang materializes before him. Identical in every way, and completely bare. It seems our main character overlooked this tiny detail, leaving the newly formed clone utterly mortified. In another location, a craftsman is meticulously working on the bracelet with high-precision instruments. He examines a specific component with intense focus, before declaring the identical ID bracelet is finally complete. With this, the clones can now access the hunting grounds simply by scanning their fingerprints. They can enter and exit simultaneously, wherever the original goes. The clone can follow. The man exclaims, "This is an ability the world has never seen. Not just in Korea, but everywhere." Finding the man's attitude a little too intense, Sang grabs his clone and announces their departure. The craftsman looks on, disappointed. He believed the clone would have made a perfect test subject. Sang later reconvenes with Junmo, confirming the authorization request is complete. All preparations for his solo hunt are now in place. He and his clone are ready for action. Junmo asks if he's heading to the hunting grounds right away, and he confirms, since his schedule for the day is clear. The man wonders why he's hiding the clone's face with a mask. Our hero explains that a lot of powerful eyes are on him lately, but as they spoke, they were being watched, from the floor above. a sinister presence glared down with a malicious grin. This man is none other than the Hyang Guildmaster, Shin Haesung. He scratches the back of his neck, muttering that he'd found his target. Then, he bellows Kong Junmo's name from above, instantly capturing everyone's attention. A thunderous noise erupts from upstairs, a massive crash that startles everyone on the floor below. The guild leader leaps from the upper level, executing a ground-shattering landing. With a smirk, he remarks that it's been a while since they've met in a place like this. Sang's body tenses. He stares at the man who just landed, thinking he looks vaguely familiar. Shin rises to his feet, casually stating he didn't realize Junmo was still working as a hunter. Our protagonist instantly recognizes him as the guildmaster, and realizes he must have fallen from several stories up. Junmo's expression turns cold and hard as he stares directly at Shin. Through gritted teeth, he offers a painfully polite greeting. His forced respect sends the guildmaster into a fit of roaring laughter. He mocks him for using such formal titles. Glancing over at Sang, he demands to know who this kid is. Junmo explains he's a hunter affiliated with their company. Shin's pupils narrow as he lets out a sigh. He scans our hero from head to toe, saying he understands, until his eyes lock onto one specific detail. He turns to Junmo and asks, "Is Sang, by any chance, an F rank?" Our protagonist does not appreciate that assumption one bit, his face a mask of pure dejection. With a trembling, mocking tone, he sneers that the man who once managed C and D ranks has certainly fallen on hard times. He lets out a roaring laugh, unable to believe Junmo was now babysitting a mere F rank, especially one in a cheap sweatshirt. The insult ignites a fire in Junmo. He clenches his jaw, fighting the urge to curse the man's entire lineage. But Sang places a calming hand on his shoulder, his serene expression completely unfazed by the guildmaster's taunts. The arrogant man, in turn, is literally wiping tears from his eyes, still cackling from his own joke. He puffs out his chest at Sang, goading him to speak. But our hero simply offers a disarmingly friendly smile, as if he brings only peace. He declares it an honor to meet the nation's #1 guildmaster. The flattery seems to work. Shin notes that he doesn't have the eyes of a typical F rank, and seems to have a good head on his shoulders. But his aura grows more sinister. "Oh, I'm not finished," Sang says. He continues, adding that the guild is also #1 in monopolizing the country's dungeons. Shin's expression brightens even more. Sang adds that they're also #1 in hunting ground restrictions and payment rates. Sang feigns being overwhelmed, saying he's not sure how to react to praise from such an important figure. Scratching his neck, Shin admits the boy has guts. He feels flattered, but a dark energy begins to radiate from him as his smile twists. He clamps his hands on Sang's shoulders, saying he wants to see if his skills can match his courage. The sudden threat worries our hero, who immediately breaks out in a nervous sweat. But just then, a man with glasses and a bowl cut shouts for his master, interrupting the tense situation. He rushes toward Shin, who calls the four-eyed man a buzzkill. Because of him, he declares, "We'll stop here for today." He steps away from the boy, staring him down with malicious eyes. He demands to know our hero's name. But our boy doesn't give in so easily, telling him to find out for himself. Waving casually, he calls him a fun guy and says goodbye to Mr. Junmo. The man in glasses begins to scold Mr. Shin, telling him he shouldn't just wander away from the association like that. Inside the car, an unspoken tension hangs in the air between Junmo-sung and his clone. A little hesitantly, Juno thanks our hero for his help, but the protagonist simply says he couldn't just turn a blind eye. He had to step in. Juno then asks if he already knew about his complicated past with the Hyang Guild. The boy smirks, saying he's no idiot, and that he dug up some dirt while researching the JM agency. He admits finding info was tough, but he eventually unearthed a rumor that Junmo had been cast out of the guild. Scrolling through old forums, he saw comments calling the guild a living nightmare, along with some much harsher insults. Sang adds that a few posts specifically warned people to never join the JM agency, because the Hyang Guild would surely come after them. So, with a puzzled look, Junmo asks why on earth he chose his agency. With a cunning grin, the boy reveals his reason. The payment rate was just too good to pass up. Meanwhile, the clone remains perfectly still, his gaze fixed on the passing scenery outside the window. Our protagonist adds that if things get too rough with the guild or the industry, Juno can count on him. Touched by this unexpected show of loyalty, the man tightens his grip on the steering wheel, his resolve hardening. He offers a heartfelt thanks as they drive on. Elsewhere, inside a gym, upbeat music blasts, fueling the energy of the crowd. But one bandaged hand, already dark with bruises, trembles as it pushes through another rep. Toned legs shake with exertion, yet they press on with unwavering determination. It's Sang's clone, so lost in his workout that the other gym members watch him with concern. The instructor nervously chews his thumbnail, stunned by the inhuman effort. A woman approaches the instructor, whispering her worries about the boy pushing himself to the brink of collapse. But the instructor just shakes his head, explaining that he already tried to intervene, But the boy refuses to listen. The poor clone looks utterly drained, but he follows his orders relentlessly until a buzz echoes from his pocket, pinning the bar with his battered hands. He pauses to check a new message. It's from Jong Sang Wu, ordering him to finish his set, take a shower, and wait outside the gym at 4 o'clock sharp. Without hesitation, the clone chugs an energy drink and ends his workout. The worried woman sighs, relieved that he's finally stopped. And the instructor lets out a breath he didn't realize he was holding. Deep within a dark cavern, countless lava slimes squelch across the ground. They coat every surface, from the floor to the walls, even dripping like molten rock from the ceiling. Suddenly, one of them bursts, letting out a sharp pop and releasing a cloud of noxious gas. A figure clad in a full hazmat suit and gas mask stands ready, hammer in hand. After smashing a slime, they use a suction hose to collect the bubbling remains, which are siphoned into a container on their back, already nearly full of a viscous red fluid. The masked figure steps through a shimmering blue portal, emerging in front of 2 heavily armed guards. It's none other than Sang, who rips off his mask and gasps for fresh air. When Junmo asks how it went, he complains that the gas mask is suffocating. Junmo explains that while this slime hunting ground is technically safe, most hunters avoid it because the profit margin is pathetically low. Staring at his damaged glove, Sang realizes this grunt work is not a long-term solution. The job is simple: fill the container and unload it. But even the most patient person would find it torturous to endure for over 6 hours. Junmo notes that with a higher-grade mask and better equipment, he could probably last longer. Sang scoffs internally, knowing he wouldn't even make it 2 hours, let alone 6. Then, a wicked idea sparks in his mind. He points to his clone and asks, what if he went instead? Without a hint of pity, Sang shoves a gas mask over his clone's face. He then meticulously ties the clone's combat boots and secures his gloves, preparing him for the harsh environment. Brimming with pride at his own genius, Sang waves goodbye, wishing his number 2 the best of luck. Without wasting another second, he eagerly asks Junmo if they can finally head to the horned rabbit hunting ground. He starts to gesture towards clone number 1, only to realize he's not there. A blank expression washes over Sang's face as he remembers. He left him at the gym, and there he is, poor number 1, waiting patiently with his gym bag, his entire body still shaking from the brutal workout. He stands exactly where his master told him to wait. Just then, a car pulls up right beside him. Sang shouts from the window, telling number 1 to hurry up and get in. Behind them, the setting sun paints the city skyline in a brilliant orange glow. As they drive, Junmo asks if Sang seriously intends to just call his clones number 1 and number 2. The protagonist explains that since they're all identical, giving them unique names would only create unnecessary confusion. The man nods in agreement. Since they are just clones, real names aren't really a necessity. Changing gears, Sang mentions hearing that hunters typically use firearms for horned rabbits. Miming a pistol with his hand, he asks if he needs to prepare any special equipment for the hunt. Junmo replies that while he can use his own gear, rental equipment is available at the hunting grounds for a price, but adds that sooner or later, our hero will need a set of his own. Rental gear is for on-site use only, which guarantees the owners can get it back. Lost in thought, Sang is startled by a sudden voice. They've reached their destination. That was the sound he heard. Before him lies the Jangan field, a graveyard of battle tanks and military hardware. Guards in full tactical gear patrol the perimeter. One of them guides a tank with glowing light sticks, a beacon in the chaos. Sang is speechless. This place is on another level entirely, a far cry from the slime hunting grounds. Juno explains this is the legendary field where a catastrophic monster invasion once broke out. The boy touches his chin, a flicker of recognition in his eyes. He's definitely heard of this incident before. Portals are usually cut off from the outside world, with hunts happening safely inside the dungeons. But sometimes, a monster tears through the veil itself, turning the real world into a battlefield. 5 years ago, that nightmare happened right here. The strongest beasts were eventually slain, leaving only a scattering of F and E-class monsters behind. In other words, it's the perfect training area. Still, Sang asks if the constant noise will cause any complaints. They gear up, stopping by a weapon rental shop first. A grim-faced attendant presents a high-powered rifle, stating the price will be 700,000. The number makes him flinch. It's an insane amount of money. But he grimly hands over his card. Junmo explains the real cost is the ammunition. But if he can hunt just one horned rabbit, it'll all be worth it. That's how rare they are. The field is split into sections, and their designated spot is on the 3rd floor. They finally make it to the platform. The guide announces their arrival at the shooting zone. Just then, a deafening explosion rips through the air, forcing Juno to cover his ears. Surprisingly, the field has a lively atmosphere. People are firing away while others casually eat and take breaks on the sidelines. A man with long hair curses under his breath, cigarette dangling from his lips as he complains about another missed shot. Nearby, a hunter in a bucket hat proudly holds up a freshly killed horned rabbit. His bag is already bulging with others from a successful day. Our hero's eyes widen. He was just told that bagging a single one was a monumental feat. Sang's assigned post is number 4. Junmo points him to his spot, then asks if he's any good with a gun. Sang snaps his rifle together with a confident smirk, asking Junmo who he thinks he's talking to. Overflowing with confidence, he boasts about missing only 3 shots in his military test, conveniently forgetting the target was much closer then. With the rifle assembled, he declares his pity for the horned rabbits. He then slips on a pair of earmuffs to block out the gunfire. As he takes aim, he makes a bold proclamation. The rabbits have nowhere to run from the eagle eye of Ujangun. For a brief moment, Junmo is just thankful that everyone here is wearing ear protection. Almost instantly, the protagonist spots a rabbit in the distance. "Found one!" he yells, his speed even catching Junmo by surprise. His focus sharpens, his vision zeroing in on the target. He takes a breath and gently squeezes the trigger. As the first shot rings out, a single thought crosses his mind. The hunt has begun. 3 hours later, night has fallen. Sang stands frozen, his face a mask of utter disbelief. He didn't land a single hit, not one. He collapses into his chair, completely devastated, muttering that it makes no sense. He was certain his aim had been perfect every single time. But the horned rabbits have incredibly long ears and acute hearing. They detect the sound of the shot long before the bullet arrives, giving them plenty of time to escape. Sang explains in frustration that the moment his finger touched the trigger, the rabbit was already gone. Agent Junmo had to leave as it got late, and worse, Sang hadn't even earned back the cost of his ammo. He wonders if he should just give up for the day. Then, an idea strikes. He calls out for number 1, who immediately responds to its master. Sang gives a new command: take the gun and hunt the rabbits. He orders the summon to message him with every kill and call if it runs out of bullets. He sighs, hating that he has to rely on such a method. And with that, he heads home, his hunting day over. Back in his room, he lies in bed, staring at his status screen. He can see his mana slowly ticking upwards, proof that number 2 is still diligently hunting slimes. He pulls up his overall status window, witnessing the constant, steady growth taking place. His stats are rising without him lifting a finger. Yet a shadow of worry still lingers in his mind. He can't forget his run-in with the Heisengild's leader, a man who could have ended his life. Closing his eyes, he knows he still has a very long way to go. Drained by the day's events, the boy's eyes slowly begin to close. He lets out a yawn after such an exhausting day, but his mind can't stop replaying the image of those rabbits slipping through his fingers. Sang's eyes flash open again. True rest eludes him. He can only hope that number 1 manages to take down at least a single horned rabbit, just to prove the gun was worth the cost. At last, he rolls over, and the world begins to fade as sleep finally starts to claim him. But just then, his phone screen erupts with light, shattering the darkness as notifications flood the display in the dead of night. Among the 46 unread messages, a huge number are from his clone, confirming a successful hunt. Elsewhere, a new day breaks over the city. The sky is a brilliant blue, dotted with a few clouds. Our focus shifts to a single shop in a sprawling building complex, surrounded by countless signs. Junmo is deep in thought, staring out the window with his arms crossed. But the piercing ring of his phone shatters the tranquil moment. He answers professionally. "JM Agency." The voice on the other end immediately asks if this is the agency representing Hunter Jong Sang Wu. The caller introduces himself. He is the manager of the slime hunting ground. With panic in his voice, he urges Junmo to come at once. When Junmo asks for the reason, the manager explains that Sang has been hunting for 24 hours straight and has gone completely berserk. A wave of dread washes over Junmo. With a voice trembling with worry, he promises to be there as fast as he can. Meanwhile, our hero is just waking up from a deep and satisfying sleep. Checking his phone, he sees a few new messages and a notification that number 1 is out of ammunition. But as he scrolls further, his eyes suddenly fly open in disbelief. Why is his inbox completely overflowing? Sang stares at the screen, looking as if he's just seen a ghost. The agent, having already reached the slime hunting ground, wears the very same expression of utter shock. Enormous tanks of slime essence stand completely full to the brim. The hunt wasn't just a success. It was an unprecedented slaughter. The manager can't believe it. How could he possibly fill every single storage container in only 1 day? The other soldiers cautiously approach a masked man, their faces etched with concern. A dark red liquid begins to drip from beneath the man's mask. Junmo fumbles for his phone and makes a call, thinking, "This is the worst possible time for this." On the other end of the line, Sang answers. The agent frantically explains that his clone has filled every last container and they're about to clear out the entire supply. He needs to command his clone to stop hunting immediately. A smirk plays on Sang's lips at the news, but then he asks if the cleanup crew can make a stop at Ujangon. Junmo is confused. What do you mean by that? And then, we see it. A towering mountain of slaughtered horned rabbits at the location. Our protagonist coolly explains that the sheer number of monster carcasses is blocking the path for everyone else. A nearby hunter stammers that there are too many to even count. The entire crowd is speechless. Another person whispers that no one would ever notice if he just took one. Clone number 1 sits calmly at his post, wearing a simple cap and mask, just like any other man. But his hands are stained with the evidence of his relentless hunt. A man in a pristine suit approaches him, holding out a business card. He says the clone's skills are unbelievable. The card is for the Brown Bear Guild. The leader's name is Kim Jong. But before the clone can even take the card, the man asks if he already belongs to a guild. The clone, however, remains eerily silent. He completely ignores the man's question, shaking with nerves. The man in the suit forces himself to stay calm, reminding himself that the truly talented are always a little strange. Another suited man nearby simply crosses his arms and sighs. It's no use at all. An entire line of men in suits stands beside them, all of whom tried to speak to the clone, only to be met with that same unnerving silence. Then he understands they are all recruiters from the most powerful guilds. While the men are talking, Sang moves through the crowd and hands the clone a small green box. In a low voice, he tells him it contains more ammunition, still whispering. He orders the clone to continue the hunt, and if the agent appears, he should let him handle the mountain of carcasses. Our protagonist pats his clone on the shoulder, praising him with a simple, "That was really good." And for the first time, a flicker of emotion crosses the clone's face. He looks truly happy to receive his master's praise. Without wasting a second, he reloads his weapon and prepares for more carnage. Everyone around him is stunned into silence, watching him prepare to hunt yet again. But many are filled with a hungry curiosity, eager to see this mysterious master in action. Some even begin to record him. Far away from the scene, Sang realizes he may have gravely underestimated what his clones are truly capable of. Right now, the clones are receiving 50% of his stats, which means they can only perform at half of Sang's full power. But their ability to operate like machines, without a shred of hesitation and with absolute concentration, is an overwhelming advantage. The protagonist is lost, contemplating the terrifying potential of his clones, when a voice shouting, "Teacher," snaps him out of his trance. Turning his head, he sees the young woman asking him what he's thinking about so intently. He tries to play it cool, saying he was just observing her progress, but she presses him, asking what was truly on his mind. Sang explains it's nothing major. He just visited a hunting ground and performed a little better than he expected. Hayan leaps to her feet, her eyes wide with disbelief. A hunter. Her tutor was a hunter this whole time. The boy freezes, realizing he'd never mentioned it. She stammers that she had absolutely no idea. Fumbling for her phone, she asks if he knows about the hunter that's been trending all day. She shoves a video in his face. It's Yu Jang-son's legendary Hawkeye sharpshooter Sang. Nearly swallows his tongue when he sees his own clone on the screen. Still reeling from the shock, he can't even form words to answer her. She pushes the phone closer. This mystery man had already hunted over 200 rabbits, maybe even enough to set a new record. But Sang remains utterly silent. His refusal to respond to anyone just made him seem even cooler, more mysterious. When the reporters asked for his name, he only said he was Yu Jang-sun's Hawkeye. That single phrase makes a shadow fall over Sang's face. The young woman sighs dreamily, confessing that the hunter is impossibly cool, and that her true dream is to become a hunter herself. Sang's attention is piqued. He asks if she's an awakened. She nods, saying she even has a license, but she's always been too scared to enter a hunting ground. She swallows nervously, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear as she looks him in the eye. She makes a proposal if she gets a good grade. Could he, just once, take her to a hunting ground? Sang reassures her. That's not difficult. If she passes her university entrance exam, he will personally take her. The girl's face lights up with pure excitement as he explains he knows a few perfectly safe hunting grounds. She immediately holds out her pinky, demanding he seal the deal with a proper promise. The boy lets out a soft sigh, a pleased smile spreading across his face at her sudden determination. And so, their agreement is sealed, pinkies intertwined. With a fiery smile, she warns him not to even think about backing out. As night falls, Sang encourages her to keep that fire alive. At this rate, he knows she'll definitely get into Gyeongguk University. A short while later, light spills from the bedroom as the door opens. Hyan's mother, surprised to see the lesson over already, looks up from the dishes. She asks if the tutoring session went well, and our protagonist confirms everything was perfect. Meanwhile, Hyan presses her ear to the door, listening as her teacher praises her work to her mother. Her mom kindly offers Sang dinner, but he politely declines, saying he has somewhere to be. He promises to return on Monday. Hearing those words, a nervous sweat immediately beads on the girl's forehead. She collapses onto her bed, hugging a teddy bear as she daydreams about their deal. A tiny flame flickering to life in the palm of her hand. My teacher is a hunter, she whispers, a smile on her face. Their conversation today was amazing. At first, she hated that her father set this up, but now, everything had changed. She remembers the kindness in his smile, and her heart begins to pound like a drum. He was kind, thoughtful, and on top of all that, a truly incredible teacher. The girl recalls those genuine smiles Sang would give her during their lessons. She clutches her bear tighter, a deep blush coloring her cheeks as she admits to herself, "He's actually pretty cute." But then, her expression shifts. Her face turns red as she lets out a determined sigh. She marches back to her desk with a newfound seriousness, her resolve to study harder than ever before. The night settles into a quiet calm. Beneath a starless sky, our main character arrives at the hunter base. Inside the elevator, he wonders if the carcass collection is finished yet. Stepping out, he finds Juno already waiting, looking surprised to see him. Seeing his agent, Sang asks if he was on site as well, noticing several men hauling large crates nearby. Junmo explains he was overseeing the collection process and asks where Sang had been. Sang simply replies that he was working his tutoring job. In the background, a worker struggles by, carrying a massive horned rabbit on his back. The agent remarks that he's dispatched collection teams countless times, but this was the first time he'd ever needed to summon such a massive crew just for horned rabbits. The final count was 352. It took a small army of collectors just to handle the sheer volume. Juno asks if Sang checked the payment he'd sent over. Sang admits he hasn't, and pulls out his phone to check. And in that instant, his once empty bank account floods with an unbelievable amount of cash. The look on Sang's face is one of pure, lottery-winning shock. He stammers, asking if this amount is even real. Junmo calmly explains that Sang's skills had far surpassed Frank's. So he adjusted the payout to the 83% rate reserved for E-rank hunters. Overwhelmed with gratitude, Sang says he's not even E-rank yet, but thanks him again and again for his generosity. Suddenly, a rough voice calls out to them. Sang, his clone, and Junmo all turn toward the sound. A battle-hardened man with a nasty scar across his face glares at them, rudely demanding to know if Junmo is his manager. He angrily points a finger at the clone, still wearing his cap and mask. The agent instinctively steps in front of the clone, asking who wants to know. "I'm the hunter whose prey was stolen," the man growls, his eyes burning with fury. Every single rabbit he had been targeting was snatched away by the clone. As far as he's concerned, today's entire hunt belongs to him. With a hand on the back of his neck, the smug hunter demands they pay up. Junmo immediately tenses up. Dealing with thugs like this is always a headache. He whispers to Sang that they picked the wrong spot, but Sang seems almost fascinated, admitting he didn't know people like this even existed. Tapping a finger to his chin, our protagonist begins to calculate his next move. Then, in a low voice, he tells his agent he's just come up with a plan. The opportunistic jerk narrows his eyes, asking what they're scheming about. He holds out his hand with a greedy smirk. He claims to be a man of principle, willing to accept a mere 10% of their earnings. Sang's clone looks on, his expression so blank it's as if his soul has fled his body. The man's face twists in anger. "Are you laughing at me? Do I look like some kind of joke to you?" Sang places a calm hand on his clone's shoulder, telling the thug not to worry. They won't be returning for a few days anyway. He signals to his agent that it's time to go, but the thug explodes, roaring that he's not finished with them yet. The pair simply ignore him, walking past as Sang casually mentions heading to a nearby cafe. This final insult sends the man over the edge. The veins on his forehead pulse with pure, unrestrained fury. He winds back for a devastating punch aimed straight for our hero's head, screaming at him to never show such disrespect. Instantly, Sang gives the order. Number 1, engage. The clone's eyes flash with a brilliant light, like a newly activated android. It steps directly into the path of the incoming fist, shielding its master. The punch connects with bone-jarring force. The clone is sent reeling, and for a moment, the thug looks genuinely bewildered by the impact. The sheer power of the blow sends number 1 soaring through the air. He ricochets off a stack of boxes like a pinball before crashing hard onto his back, arms splayed wide. The attack must have been brutal, as scuff marks are now visible across the clone's mask. The thug's entire demeanor shifts. He looks panicked, stammering that he didn't even hit him that hard. Seizing the opportunity, Sang raises his phone and hits record, shouting about the man's unbelievable cruelty for all to hear. Our hero declares that no one will let this slide. Such barbaric violence has no place in a sacred hunting ground. The thug is trapped. He glances around frantically as the other cleanup crews stop and stare, their shouts echoing around him. Sang adds poison to his words, musing how tragic it would be if this video surfaced on the hunter web. The man's face turns beet red, veins bulging. He's sweating, completely lost for words. Sang moves in close, placing a heavy hand on the man's shoulder with a look of utter disappointment. A dark, menacing aura surrounds him as he suggests they simply forget this ever happened and go their separate ways. The thug grinds his teeth in suppressed rage, realizing he has absolutely no choice. Later, at a quiet outdoor cafe, Sang sips his drink and asks about the infamous Haeyoung Guild. Junmo suspects the thug was a member. A guild as massive as Haeyoung is bound to have all sorts, including bottom-feeding gangsters. As the clone downs its drink in one massive gulp, Sang asks how his agent knew the man was part of that specific guild. Junmo explains the thug had been glaring at him with a particular malice from the start, a hostility he's only ever seen from the Haeyoung Guild. Sang realizes this was likely an act of revenge. They probably mistook his clone for another hunter contracted with the JM agency and decided to send a message. The agent admits that hunters from the JM agency rarely stick around for long, leaving only a few loyal members behind. And even now, Junmo can't promise there won't be more sabotage from Haeyoung. But with unwavering confidence, our hero says he knew all of that before he ever signed on. This does little to calm the agent's nerves, but he sees the determination in the boy's eyes. Sang declares he won't be threatened by cowards. In fact, he has a plan to skyrocket his power level, and fast. The young hunter lays out his strategy, and his agent listens, impressed by the boy's sharp intellect. Their discussion continues for some time. As the day wears on at the cafe, Sang finally asks his agent for his final opinion on the idea. With a look of genuine astonishment, Junmo admits he'd never considered such a method. He quickly jots down notes in his memo pad and asks if tomorrow afternoon at 2 o'clock would work. Their meeting point is set the legendary Giant Hunter Market, a magnificent structure known to all. The Hunter Market is a colossal building with vibrant, bustling floors, offering everything a hunter could ever dream of. It has traded in weapons and equipment since the dawn of the hunter era. It was once the place where every hunter geared up. However, a new department store chain has recently moved in, dominating most of the industry. They boasted a collection of every piece of equipment a hunter could ever need. We find Sang trying on a sleek set of armor. This masterpiece is crafted from titanium, offering full protection against E-class monsters. Wearing the suit, our protagonist notes how comfortable and light it is. He's already in love with it. Better yet, a dagger is strategically sheathed at his side. He unsheaths the razor-sharp blade. The boy remarks that since he'll be using weapons from now on, this feature is absolutely perfect. With his newfound wealth, he requests 2 more sets of identical armor, and the seller eagerly accepts. Leaving the shop loaded with gear, he feels the sheer power of money. But Juno knows equipment isn't enough. He still needs to acquire skills. He's searching for the familiar skill, but doubts a technique so rare could be found in this market. The agent points them toward a shop called Heritage, a place filled with mystical items that glitter like a witch's crystal balls. They scan the display cases, hunting for their prize, until Sang finally spots what he's looking for inside a glowing blue orb. The skill is named Familiar, a power allowing a hunter to share senses directly with their summons and pets. Its potential was boundless, but its price tag was absolutely staggering. He covers his face, genuinely wondering if he could survive on 1 kidney, or if selling an organ was worth this power. Shamelessly, he turns to his agent and asks for an advance. Poor Junmo, with tears in his eyes, agrees to try and lend him 50 million won. Sang thanks him, promising to handle the rest in installments. He was risking everything on his agent's credit. But his faith in the skill was unshakable. He knew they could earn back the money in no time with this power. With the deal sealed, they take the priceless orb to a secure location, where our hero begins to study the instruction manual. It listed 2 activation methods, one for users of mana, and another for those without. As he can't wield mana, he takes out a small remote, pressing his hand firmly against the orb to connect with it. He trembles slightly, a wave of apprehension washing over him. Would this truly work? Squeezing his eyes shut, he presses the button. A brilliant orange light erupts from the orb, flooding the entire room. The light swells outward, culminating in a silent, massive explosion of pure energy. A system notification appears. Familiar skill created. Level 1, share senses with a designated target. Sang stares down at his hands, a look of pure astonishment on his face. The orb vanishes, its power now absorbed within him. Clenching his fists, the protagonist feels the new power coursing through his veins. He rises and summons his ever-loyal clones. They appear before him, moving in perfect unison. They are already prepared for the mission, clad in the new armor he had purchased. Sang looks at his 2 copies with a determined gaze and gives the command to begin. Earlier, the protagonist had asked his agent about the last hunt's results. Junmo had admitted the outcome was beyond his wildest expectations. Sang explained that even with stats at half his own, a single clone had hunted over 300 rabbits. Furthermore, when ordered to take a hit for him, the clone had stepped forward without a single shred of fear. It takes incredible determination to face a blow to the head without flinching. Sang knew it could have easily beaten the thug from before. Junmo understood, though, their stats were lower. Their body control was far superior. Confirming this, Sang declared he would now use this advantage to its fullest. His agent asked for the plan, and Sang explained that he needed 2 specific places, training grounds to hone both his long-range and close-quarters combat skills. They arrive at a combat facility, greeted by a burly instructor, before heading to a shooting range to practice marksmanship on clay pigeons. The protagonist's objective was clear: push his clones to their absolute limit and force them to shatter their boundaries. The instructors at both sites, a hulking fighter and an old marksman, are stunned by the clone's intense attitude. At the physical training ground, one clone demands a live duel, worrying the instructor. At the range, the other clone bypasses the usual shotgun and requests a pistol instead. A courageous fire burns in both of their eyes as they confirm their choice, absolutely certain. In the combat arena, the clone readies his batons and tells his opponent to prepare himself. At the shooting range, the second clone picks up a live firearm, not a practice weapon. The shooting instructor watches warily, device in hand, before giving the signal to start. Meanwhile, the combat instructor unleashes his most ferocious fighter against the clone. Both challenges begin simultaneously. The wild fighter lunges forward, just as a clay pigeon soars into the sky. In a flash, the first clone disarms his opponent, snatching a baton. In that same instant, the other clone fires, shattering the pigeon with a single, perfect shot. The burly instructor's jaw drops, unable to process what he's just witnessed. The old marksman looks as if he's just seen a ghost. The combat clone remains in his fighting stance, baton held steady, ready for more. And the shooter clone holds his gun, the barrel still smoking from the shot. Back with Sang and Juno, he reveals this is exactly why he needs the familiar skill. The agent is stunned by this incredibly detailed plan. Juno still doesn't get why he'd share his vision, but Sang clarifies it's about much more than just sight. Sang explains that every single one of their senses will be connected as one. Imagine the combat data he could gather while his clones trained with guns or in close combat. In that moment, the boy shuts his eyes, focusing all his will. And then, he activates his familiar skill. A neon blue aura explodes around him, simmering with untamed energy. It's a big bang for his senses as a flood of sensations pours in. He can see his clone locked in a fierce baton fight, and he can feel the wild opponent charging with full force. The main character is watching the fight from a distance, experiencing it all in real time. He can micromanage the angle of joints and the body's center of balance to evade attacks. Just like that, the clone avoids the blow with ninja-like reflexes. The contraction of muscles and the very flow of force are all under Sang's complete control. He even controls their breathing as they prepare to fire, making his clones' aim and dexterity infinitely better. The point of aim and even their line of sight are strategically modified on the fly. The clay pigeon seems to drift in slow motion, making it an easy target. Sang can do this for every single movement of every single clone. His eyes remain closed, his mind connected to every calculated move. Now, he slowly opens his eyes, returning to his own reality. A determined smile spreads across his face. He knows he can have them all. As he uses the skill, his aura ignites into a blue flame. Convinced this was the deal of a lifetime, he gazes at his hand, proud of his power. The experiences were magnificent, like the rush of air as an opponent's staff whipped past his face, or the sharp smell of gunpowder and the brutal kickback of the gun he fired. He can even feel the deep fatigue settling into his clone's muscles. But he himself hadn't moved an inch. He just shared their senses, experiencing every movement through bodies identical to his own. It's as if he could perfectly replicate any of those techniques right now. A status screen suddenly appears, notifying him that his strength and cooldown time have increased. He decides to reconnect with number 1 to see what kind of battle he's in. Again, he closes his eyes and focuses his mind to activate the skill. Sang once again unleashes his flaming blue aura, unleashing his immense power. We see several punching bags hanging in the room. He has transported his consciousness to the gym. Number 1 is in a combat stance, holding his staffs and staring down his opponent, who wields 2 staffs of his own. It's that man in the kimono, one of the most powerful fighters. Sang can tell this opponent will be a serious challenge. The other students in the dojo are in shock to see that their own trainer is going to fight personally. Both fighters prepare to begin. Number 1 opens the battle with a precise strike that instantly knocks one of the trainer's weapons from his hand. The blow is incredibly powerful, throwing the muscular trainer completely off balance. The big guy thinks to himself that the clone lacks experience in his attacks. But his defense is another story. It feels like he can predict every single move. This worries the trainer, forcing him to get serious. The veins on his face bulge as he manages to land a direct hit on the clone's staff. The clone feels the powerful impact, his arms trembling from the force. He raises his arm with phenomenal strength that even startles the instructor. The 2 opponents get face to face in a sinister stare-down. The instructor is amazed by the raw force of the attack, and by his ability to copy a move in an instant. Things are looking grim for the big guy, who starts to doubt his chances of winning this fight. So, he unleashes a last-ditch attack with his arms, but the clone manages to dodge it. The crowd goes wild, unable to believe he evaded the attack. Taking advantage of the instructor's open guard, the clone makes his move. He manages to land the blow, which hits the staff, but the impact also slams into the man's shoulder. Shocked, the instructor feels the devastating attack. As if smoke were rising from his staff, He realizes he's been cornered. The wall is right behind him. Seeing his advantage, number 1 prepares his next attack. But the instructor still has a few tricks up his sleeve. Using the wall for support, he executes a perfect flip, dodging the blow from above. This incredible move leaves Sang completely stunned, his eyes wide with disbelief. The brawny man lands from his jump right behind the main character's clone. His eyes glazed over, ultra-focused on his every movement. He's still ready for more. The students are proud of their trainer, but they all know it was a dangerously close call. Meanwhile, Sang feels the backlash from his own attack. A searing pain shoots through his wrist. As he staggers up, the trainer warns that his last blow was a dangerous gambit. He asks number 1 if he still has the will to continue. Through their mental link, Sang asks his clone if he's all right. The copy simply lowers his head, his face shrouded by his cap. Then, in a breathtaking leap, he perfectly mimics the trainer's move, using the wall as a springboard. The other students are left utterly speechless. Even the trainer is stunned, unsure of where the attack came from. Sang's voice echoes in his clone's mind, asking if he will press on. Number 1 lands flawlessly, just as the trainer did. Holding the staff to his face, he politely requests another round. A confident smile spreads across the trainer's face. He accepts the challenge, readying his weapons. But Sang has seen enough. It's time to switch to number 2. A vibrant blue aura ignites around the clone as the skill activates. In an instant, the target is obliterated in midair, shattering into 1,000 fragments. A well-dressed blonde man laughs, asking his darling if she saw his shot. A woman with long black hair claps, confirming that she did. Sang keeps his opinion to himself, but the entire exchange makes him cringe. He realizes number 2 is so deep in the zone, he started shooting at targets in the neighboring lanes. He decides to let it slide and just focus on the next shot. The well-dressed man calls for more targets. Now, it's number 2's turn again at the shooting range. Sang ensures his clone's upper body is perfectly stable, his aim locked in. He knows the key is to keep his body still, pivoting only his torso to follow the target's trajectory. The moment the sights and the flight path align, he prepares to pull the trigger. And just like that, the clay pigeon explodes into dust. Another point for our peerless marksman. A wisp of smoke curls from the barrel of the gun. Number 2 observes the result of his perfect shot. Sang's voice reminds him to commit every single detail to memory. With a gaze of pure, focused intensity, shooter number 2 is on an absolute roll. The sky above begins to burn orange as the sun dips below the horizon. Sang is concentrating, his signature flaming blue aura signaling the use of his familiar skill. He opens his eyes, his expression cold and unforgiving. But our hero is completely drained. Switching between number 1 and number 2 has taken a massive toll on his body. Looking down at his own hand, the world begins to tilt and spin. His mana has been completely depleted, and a wave of vertigo washes over him. It's time to rest. The main character is now sitting on a bench, watching his clones. Their movements are wild and untamed. Since they feel no fear or hesitation, they just charge forward relentlessly. He makes a mental note to join them next time, to test his own limits. Suddenly, someone approaches the spot where Sang is sitting. A very familiar girl with vibrant purple hair walks past. It's Hayoung. She recognizes him instantly and calls out his name. The protagonist is shocked to run into her here, of all places. Worried, he asks what she's doing out so late, and she explains she was just at the library. He gives her a suspicious look, but she snaps back angrily that she was just doing her homework. But from the shadows, other eyes are watching them. A rugged, tough-looking man lights a cigarette, asking if this is the guy they were talking about. The three of them look like they were pulled straight from a gangster movie, menace radiating from their very presence. One of them is on the phone, and a voice on the other end demands to know if he let Kang Junmo go. It's the same man who tried to bribe Sang earlier. Terrified, he claims he was only trying to intimidate him, but then he reveals someone was filming the entire encounter. The voice on the phone roars, then quickly orders him to forget it, say nothing, and stay far away from the Yujang field. The voice adds that no matter what happens, he is to claim it has nothing to do with the Hyang Guild, and his final order act like a common street thug. Then, the line goes dead. The man is consumed by fury. He hurls his phone against the wall with all his might. He curses the man on the other end of the line. Blinded by rage, he stomps on the shattered phone, screaming profanities like a madman. While mercilessly crushing the device, he roars, "Do you have any idea who you're messing with?" But as he's throwing his tantrum, a new voice cuts in from behind, asking why he's so upset. It's Gunso Hyung, a massive, intimidating man, accompanied by another with long, straight hair. The big man's smile is sinister, marking him as a truly dangerous individual. The ground is littered with cigarette butts. The whole place is a dump. The trio is so menacing that passersby give them a wide berth. Hyung calls the man Kid, saying he should have expected this when he joined the country's #1 guild. The man is shaking in his boots. He asks if there's still work for him. explaining the guild told him to stay away from the Ujiangan field. Hung glances at the long-haired man, Chang Wan, who suggests he might have some part-time work available. But as they're talking, his gaze lands on Sang and Haiyang sitting nearby. And as if by fate, the two thugs are chatting just a few meters away. The man with the scar points at Song and sneers. That's the bastard who shot the video. The mountain of a man beside him just grunts, telling him to calm down. Leaning against a pillar, he begins to watch. He inches closer to his colleague, their eyes locked on the protagonist and the girl. Sang appears completely at ease, lost in his conversation. Haiyang asks her teacher what he's doing here, and he casually replies that he's just exercising. But an unwelcome voice suddenly shatters their peace. A figure approaches, grinding a cigarette under his boot. I hear my little brother owes you something, he says, his voice dripping with malice. It's the three menacing, gangster-like thugs, and they're closing in. The girl asks who they are. As Sang notes, he's never seen anyone so massive. Then his eyes lock onto a familiar, annoying face among them. He recognizes the man with the scar, and his thoughts immediately jump to his clones. Our protagonist steps in front of the girl, shielding her. How can I help you? He asks, his voice steady. The scar-faced thug's face instantly contorts with rage. But before he can explode, his enormous friend tells him to relax. The big man explains he's here because he heard Sang has a video of his brother. Getting a little too carried away. The leader's demand is simple: delete the video, and they will leave peacefully. Sang holds up his phone, his expression skeptical. So if I just delete this? He asks. We're all good? He aims his phone at the thugs, his gaze sharp. What's my guarantee that you'll really let me go if I do? The giant covers his mouth, a mocking smile playing on his lips. You're not an idiot, he chuckles. You know we can't just let you leave unharmed. He adds another taunt, saying our protagonist wasn't smart enough to delete it on the spot. So it makes no difference now. In a low whisper, the boy tells Haiyang, wait for an opening, and then run. He turns back to the thugs and retorts, oh, believe me, there's a difference. He's terrified, never imagining he'd be thrown into such a dire situation so quickly. But he settles into a fighting stance, his eyes blazing. The difference is, I'm about to wipe the floor with all three of you. The leader, Hung, just laughs at his confidence as his goons charge forward. The protagonist masterfully dodges the first strike. But it's 2 against 1, an impossible fight. The long-haired thug lands a heavy blow right on the poor boy's head. At the same time, the other goon connects with a vicious kick. Reeling from the impacts, our protagonist is in serious trouble before he can even recover. Another punch smashes into his chin. Teacher, Haiyang screams, her voice filled with terror. Powerless to help, she watches him fall to the ground after the brutal onslaught. He's badly wounded, realizing his first real fight is not going well at all. But the brave girl stands over him protectively as a light gathers at her fingertips. The light forms a sphere of energy in her hand as she yells for them to stay back, getting to his feet with great difficulty. Sang sees his student defending him, but then he notices something that chills him to the bone. She's trying to be brave, but her entire body is trembling. The two gangsters realize she's an awakened, and they do not look pleased. The colossal leader shoves his men aside. Are you two really scared of a little high school girl? He scoffs. He confronts the girl, his presence overwhelming. And what happens if we don't back off? The giant shows no mercy, closing the distance and intimidating her. But before he can get any closer, the girl screams for him to stay away and unleashes her power. The man's massive body looms over her. The girl is shaking uncontrollably, gritting her teeth with fear. In a clumsy, desperate move, she unleashes a strike from her hand. The blast of energy flies true, slamming into the big guy's gut. The impact creates a massive explosion that echoes through the area, kicking up a storm of dust and smoke. The other two gangsters cry out their leader's name in alarm. After a moment, the smoke begins to clear. Hung stands there completely unharmed. First of all, he sneers, awakened are a dime a dozen. You shouldn't get so cocky. The only damage he took was to his clothes, which are now torn, revealing sinister tattoos across his body. He raises his huge arm, preparing a slap. Time to grow up, he snarls at Haiyang. But just as the attack is about to hit her, Sang leaps in front of her. With pure hatred in his eyes, he glares at the giant. This fight isn't over yet. Pouring all his strength into a single blow, he lands a punch square on Hung's face. With his guard down, the giant's arms fly back, revealing an awakened bracelet. Haiyang sees it and gasps in shock at the revelation. Our protagonist is giving it his all in this unfair 3-on-1 battle. Hung feels the full force of that solid punch and groans in pain. Sang remains on guard, as the big guy's face twists with absolute fury over what just happened. Model. He had to access the memories of clone number 1. The clone hadn't seen the weapon, but the wielder's intent. The trick was to watch the shoulder and move before the attack was even launched. He finally understood that a real attack wasn't just some wild swing of the arms. It was a kinetic chain, a flow of power from the legs, through the waist, and unleashed through the arms in one fluid motion. Armed with this new, calculating insight, Sang drove another effective blow into his opponent. But he saw the counter coming, a punch he couldn't possibly dodge. So instead of a futile escape, he landed a punishing double punch deep in the man's stomach. Sang was gasping for air, but his enemy was in far worse shape, doubled over in pure agony. Our hero's face was already swelling from the blows he'd taken, and he wiped a thumb across his own bloodied lips. "So the kid knows how to fight?" Hung sneered, his eyes beginning to glow with a menacing red light. He admitted he'd been hesitant to get serious with someone who couldn't even throw a proper punch. The pain still throbbed through Sang's body, but he held his ground. He'd landed his hits, but the sheer power difference was immense. He wondered if the man had some kind of strength enhancement skill. If so, letting him land a single clean hit was not an option. The massive brute charged forward, a wicked smile plastered on his face. But Sang used his superior agility, snapping out a quick punch before the man could get close. The blow landed squarely on the giant's face. With a face now bruised and swollen, Hung roared in fury, cursing our protagonist. He swung his arms wildly, desperate to crush the boy no matter the cost. Sang gracefully leaped out of the way, landing another counterstrike. He knew he needed one powerful, decisive blow to cause real damage. The moment he landed, the hulking man prepared to swing again. But Sang didn't waste a second, landing yet another punch on the brute's battered face. Nearby, Chang was still crouched on the ground, cheering weakly for his so-called partner. But our hero was so focused, the rest of the world had faded away. He was 100% zoned in on the fight, absolutely livid. Hung couldn't stand the humiliation, drool mixing with rage. His entire body began to glow a deep crimson, and his tattoos seemed to writhe with dark energy. The arm he was winding up seemed to swell in size, crackling with devastating power as he prepared to strike Sang. Our boy knew this next attack would be overwhelming. He had to dodge it, but to his horror, a treacherous hand suddenly grabbed his foot, holding him in place. He looked down to see Chang Wan, cowardly pinning him to the spot so he couldn't escape. Now, our hero was completely trapped. He couldn't jump or move his body out of the path of destruction. And the giant unleashed all of his fury in a tremendous punch that slammed right into Sang's stomach. The agony was immense, like he'd been gored by a charging rhinoceros. Han watched, devastated. "No!" she screamed, her eyes wide with terror as the attack sent our hero flying backward into a wall. He crumpled to the ground, clutching his stomach, fighting just to take a breath. But his lungs wouldn't cooperate. The blow was simply too powerful. Trying to stay calm, he knew he had to regulate his breathing. His eyes remained locked on his foe, his spirit refusing to shatter. But Hung wasn't done yet, readying another strike with that monstrous arm. The impact was colossal, and a cloud of black smoke erupted from the point of contact. But it was Hung who was suffering the consequences. His eyes rolled back as he gasped for air. Sang stared at his opponent, completely baffled by what just happened. The one responsible was Annan, now standing in a combat stance with her hand raised. The other two thugs were on the ground, cursing the girl. No one had seen this coming. She turned to face them as they screamed that she was an idiot who should have run away. But suddenly, the clones appeared from the shadows, descending upon the two traitors. The girl was stunned, but incredibly relieved as a masked clone took a position beside her. Hung was distracted by the fight behind him, turning to see what was going on. But Sang's voice snapped the giant's attention back to him. He wiped a cut on his face and declared that he could finally breathe properly now. The bulky thug charged at the protagonist with pure hatred in his eyes, but our boy just looked back with absolute confidence. He executed the same technique he had used against the instructor in the training yard, using the wall as a foothold to launch himself out of the way. As he flew past the giant, he thanked him for being such a good practice dummy, and with all the momentum he'd gathered, he delivered a phenomenal kick straight to the giant's head. After that incredible move, Sang collapsed to the floor, panting and exhausted, but in much better shape than the big guy, who was left completely broken on the ground. His friends weren't faring any better. A status screen appeared, showing Sang had gained muscular strength, speed, stamina, and dexterity. Furthermore, his cloning ability had received a temporary level up. He could now create 3 clones. With his face battered and bruised, our boy just laughed as he saw the proof of how much stronger he'd become. The moment he allows himself to relax, the adrenaline fades, and his body collapses to the floor. The 2 clones and Han rush to his side, checking if he's all right. But a grin of pure victory spreads across Sang's face. Later that evening, the city glows under the blanket of artificial lights. Hyun's hand is neatly bandaged as Sang asks why she didn't flee when she had the chance. She explains that if she hadn't intervened, things would have ended far worse for him, a fact he confirms with a shaky voice. The girl admits her surprise, having never believed the legendary Supreme Hunter was actually Sang's clone. Hearing this, the The clone puffs his chest out with pride as the main character walks over. He asks her to keep this information quiet, and she questions his motives. Is he not interested in fame, Sang explains. It would only attract the wrong kind of attention. So she promises his secret is safe with her. They soon arrive at her home, but she looks a little sad, as if she wanted their conversation to last longer. The protagonist asks about her hand, worried she won't be able to hold a pen, but she reveals it was her left hand that was injured. She playfully suggests that since she's injured, he should probably give her less homework. But he counters, asking if she didn't already complete it at the library. Annoyed, the girl complains that his memory is infuriatingly sharp at the worst possible moments. Sang covers his face for a moment, then sincerely thanks his student for everything she did. He knows he only won because she disrupted his opponent at the perfect time. Blushing, the young woman declares that she clearly played a crucial role in his victory today. She teases him, saying a simple thank you isn't enough. He owes her a proper meal for her troubles, essentially inviting herself to dinner. With a determined look in her eyes, she tells him that taking her to dinner is now an official promise. After they say their goodbyes and she heads inside, beaming with joy, Sang vows to make sure she eats plenty of good meat. He walks away feeling satisfied, only to notice his two clones staring at him with wide, intense eyes. Their gazes make him feel incredibly awkward. He snaps at them to stop slacking and get back to training. But they remind him that it's late and the training grounds are already closed. In response, the boy crouches down, picks up a stick, and flashes them a deceptively sweet smile. He hands a stick to each clone, announcing that the park will be their new training ground. 1 month later, we find ourselves on the street outside Agent Juno's office. He's on a call with Sang, getting an update on the training plan. The boy reports that it was a complete success. Standing with his clones, the main character reveals he's mastered hitting targets with a pistol and can now summon a third clone. Junmo realizes this means Sang's growth rate will now skyrocket. A quick look at his status window confirms just how monstrous his evolution has been. He then tells his agent that he has a surprise for him, though it might be a bit sudden. He asks if Juno can secure 3 E-rank hunting grounds for the next day. The agent proudly guarantees he'll get them, no matter what, leaving Sang thoroughly pleased. Juno asks for the schedule, and the boy lays out the planned physical conditioning in the morning, followed by dungeon hunting in the afternoon. Ending the call with his agent, he turns his attention to his 3 identical clones. He assigns their new roles. One will focus on upper body strength, the second on lower body, and the third on cardiovascular endurance. He orders them to head to the park and be back by 12 sharp. The 3 oafs almost walk out with their weapons, forcing him to yell at them to leave the gear at home. Meanwhile, Sang sits at his computer, meticulously analyzing monster hunting strategies. He reflects on how quickly the clones learn, capable of perfectly replicating nearly any action they witness. This means if he studies the monster's weak points and hunting patterns, the clones can execute the plan flawlessly. Our protagonist becomes completely absorbed, watching countless online tutorials on how to battle various monsters. The videos even detail the most effective weapons and strategies for a successful hunt. The next day, we return to our hero's apartment. The clones arrive right on schedule, just as their master requested, but with massive dark circles under his eyes. It's clear the boy pulled an all-nighter and didn't even notice the sun had come up. While he's completely drained of energy, his clones are practically bursting with vitality. He tells them to hit the showers and grab something to eat. As they remove their armor, his mind cycles through the data he gathered on different monsters. He decides to analyze each one's hunting progress and use the downtime to practice his mana techniques. Just then, Sang gets a text from his agent, who says he'll be there in 10 minutes. The clones are devouring their food when he tells them to get ready to move out as soon as they're done. The agent and the boy meet right outside the building. The 3 fully equipped clones radiate a powerful, intimidating aura that doesn't go unnoticed by either Junmo or Sang. The ever-efficient agent confirms he secured 3 separate training grounds, all conveniently located near each other. Our protagonist thanks him, but then asks him to watch over the clones, revealing that he himself won't be joining them. Instead, he'll participate remotely using his familiar skill, allowing him to focus on training his mana breathing. With that, the car door closes, and the mission begins. Sang puts his hands on his hips, ready to begin his own training. He turns on some background music with guided instructions to help him enter a state of deep concentration. With a slow, measured breath, he moves with absolute caution, settling into a meditative pose. A blue aura envelops him, his focus becoming absolute. The tutorial mentioned recalling the sensation of using a skill, so he narrows his concentration to that single memory. He remembers the feeling of energy leaving him when he summoned his familiar. With eyes closed, he feels that same power now circulating within. His breathing is perfectly controlled, synchronized with the voice guiding him from the audio file. Suddenly, a new feeling emerges in his chest. It's as if all his energy is converging at the very center of his being, flowing like a gentle river. His body feels like a vast universe, filled with countless constellations of raw power. His eyes snap open, the sensation overwhelming him, In that instant, a system window materializes before him. He's acquired the meditation skill, boosting his mana recovery. Far from there, in a desolate hunting ground, a wounded man crawls across the floor, surrounded by monster corpses. The warrior is gravely injured, unable to comprehend how a monster this powerful exists in a low-level rank E dungeon. A grotesque creature with razor-sharp teeth gnaws on the carcass of an alien fish. The wounded hunter knows he must report this anomaly. This beast is far beyond the designated threat level for this area. In a moment of sheer desperation, the man glances at the reflection on his bracer, only to see the shadow of a monster looming directly behind him. The cursed beast closes the distance in a flash, ready to claim another life. A blood-curdling scream echoes, powerful enough to be heard outside the dungeon's gate. At that moment, Juno's car door swings open. He's arrived at the final hunting ground he found for the clones. The agent explains this area is filled with alien fish, infamous for their crushing jaws. A clone slams the car door shut as Junmo offers a final warning to be careful on the hunt. He takes out his phone, sending a message to Sang, confirming all 3 clones have been successfully deployed. A thrill runs through Junmo. The ability to hunt in 3 different locations simultaneously is truly revolutionary. Depending on how this operation goes, the entire hunter industry could be turned on its head. Meanwhile, back at his house, Sang is feeling incredibly pleased with himself for learning the mana breathing skill. But his triumphant expression quickly morphs into a sad puppy face when he realizes mana breathing and meditation are 2 entirely different skills. Scratching his neck in frustration, he figures the mana breathing skill must be much harder to obtain. His phone buzzes with the agent's message, confirming the clone's arrival. With renewed focus, he activates his familiar skill to check in on his copies. The first thing he sees is a giant rat getting smashed right in its massive teeth. The sight is so jarring, our protagonist can't help but let out a yell. It's clone number 1, who's in the middle of hunting a truly repulsive-looking sewer rat. It seems the hunt is going smoothly so far, thanks to the video guides he watched, but more of the disgusting vermin are now charging forward. Sang decides to observe, to see if those guides were actually worth the time. He recalls the details from the tutorial video. The instructor explained that these rats are among the most irritating rank F monsters. He even recommended hunting them in groups. But when forced to fight alone, there were specific strategies to follow. First, since they charge in a straight line, it's best to maintain distance and use ranged attacks. Number 1 executes this flawlessly. He keeps his distance, firing relentlessly. But when ranged attacks aren't enough, close quarters combat becomes necessary. The rat's skulls are notoriously tough, so attacking a different weak point is crucial. The optimal choice is to target the spine, and the clone does just that. The blow lands perfectly, annihilating the rat in a single strike. But just like their normal counterparts, these monsters reproduce at an alarming rate, meaning their numbers are overwhelming. The instructor in the video coolly adjusts his glasses, stating that for a well-prepared hunter, they're nothing more than walking experience points. A student in the video shouts back that hitting a moving spine isn't as easy as it sounds. But the clone remains focused, ready for anything. Empty casings fly through the air as he unloads on his targets. Each shot finds its mark on the creature's spines, taking them down with cold efficiency. In another hunting ground, a desert of endless sand dunes, the second clone is on the move. Suddenly, a dune shifts violently, like a localized earthquake. From the sands, a colossal scorpion erupts. The clones possess all their master's techniques, but they are completely devoid of human emotions, like surprise or fear. They hunt without hesitation, ignoring their opponent's level and unfazed by any difference in power. The clone stands victorious over the massive scorpion, weapon held firm, while Sang experiences every moment of the hunt through his skill. Countless system windows appear, one after another, announcing the victories of his copies. In yet another field, the third clone hunts the alien fish. And as Sang's own stats begin to rise, the clones, in turn, grow even stronger. With unwavering resolve, our hero's goal for the day was clear: completely wipe out the F-class monster fields with his powerful clones. Deep within the hunting grounds, footsteps echo. 2 hunters murmur about the eerie silence that hangs in the air. They haven't spotted a single monster all day. Their eyes lock onto a strange object in the distance, their curiosity pulling them closer. It's a mountain of monster carcasses. One of them, eyes wide with greed, wonders how much this haul is worth. Without hesitation, they begin stuffing the spoils into boxes. The sky is a brilliant blue, a perfect day for a hunt. A clone stands triumphant, weapon in hand, surrounded by the evidence of its absolute massacre. Sang knew the hunt was a resounding success, but a nagging feeling crept into his mind. He felt like he'd forgotten something vital. And then, it struck him like a thunderbolt. Hook? He remembered the cleanup crew collecting the horned rabbit corpses. And a horrifying realization dawned. He hadn't collected a single one of his kills. In a panic, he sends a new command to his 3 clones: stop everything, and retrieve all the carcasses immediately. But a dreadful thought takes hold. What if someone already looted them? A single tear of bitter regret streams down his face. Suddenly, a spark of inspiration hits him. He notices his third clone is ignoring a pile of alien fish corpses. The clone reports back, stating that it wasn't the one who hunted them. But a greedy Sang immediately overrides him. This is no time for honesty. Every single one of those is worth a fortune. Number 3 dutifully approaches the fish carcasses. The scene is utterly grotesque. Whoever killed these things minced them like baby food. But as the clone sorts through the gory mess, something strange catches its eye. Hidden inside a mangled body is an object that doesn't belong. The clone asks, "Should I retrieve this?" When Sang sees it through the clone's eyes, he freezes in horror. It's a human arm, already starting to decompose. While reeling from the grim discovery, a flicker of movement registers behind number 3. His senses go on high alert. Sang sees the movement too and screams a mental warning. Something is there. The clone instantly brandishes its weapon. He rises to his feet, scanning his surroundings. An enemy or a thief trying to steal their kill. Then, a chilling sound from directly behind him makes his blood run cold. A severed alien fish head lands with a sickening thud before him, butchered in the same brutal fashion. And lurking behind number 3 is a horrifying, eel-like sea monster. In that terrifying moment, he understood the fish head was bait. Number 3 is no fool. Realizing it's an ambush, he spins around. But before he can act, his arm is torn clean off his body, ripped away with sickening ease, like a piece from a Lego set. Poor number 3 is overwhelmed by confusion. A tidal wave of different emotions and blinding pain crashes over him. But this reveals the terrible disadvantage of the familiar skill. Because someone else is feeling every ounce of that agony. Sang unleashes a world-ending scream. Excruciating pain explodes in his arm, as if it were his own flesh being torn apart. And then, the connection shatters. The skill forcibly disconnects. He jolts awake, as if from a living nightmare, terrified and trembling. The boy frantically looks at his own arm, praying it's still there. It is. He can still move it normally. But the phantom pain, the sheer trauma of the experience, was so horrific. Our main character is completely paralyzed with fear. He can only huddle in a corner of his house, utterly broken. As his breathing steadies, he realizes the sheer pain severed the connection. But this is no time for reflection. He snatches his phone and frantically calls his agent. Junmo answers right away, and our main character desperately asks which field number 3 was sent to. The agent hears the raw panic in Sang's voice. "The sewage treatment plant in Inchan," he says, desperate. He begs Junmo to take number 1 and number 2 there immediately. "I'm on my way," he shouts. "I'll explain when I arrive." As for the explanation, he can only summarize it in one sentence. There is a really big problem. Back at the plant, poor number 3 is completely wrecked, missing an arm and covered in grievous injuries. The monster he's fighting is no mere beast. It's a humanoid creature, wielding a sword with deadly purpose. Our poor number 3 can't take anymore. The beating was too violent. His consciousness fades as he collapses before the marine aberration, which watches with a sinister, expressionless face. Sang slams a car door, his movements fueled by pure desperation. He jumped in a taxi to race to the hunting ground. He's sweating, terrified, and breathless, as if he just ran a marathon. The place is enormous, filled with gigantic, labyrinthine sewage machines. Our main character feels the final severance from clone number 3. Unfortunately, he still has a long wait before he can use the skill again. Guards at the entrance stop him, demanding to see his ID bracelet. He flashes it and pushes past the blockade. To the boy's immense relief, the agent is already there. He even managed to bring clones number 1 and number 2. Sang quickly explains that number 3 has vanished. And before he disappeared, he saw a powerful monster. Something far more dangerous than any alien fish. It had the head of a fish, but the arms and legs of a monster. Junmo's eyes widened at the terrifying description. Deeply concerned, he urged they alert the authorities at once. The area had to be shut down. That thing was a D-rank monster known as a fishman. An entire party of E-class hunters would be utterly annihilated by such an atrocity. Sang agreed to alert the guards and block entry for other hunters, but not yet. He gave a chilling order, do it only after his clones had entered the portal. The command left Junmo completely stunned, scratching the back of his neck. Sang stated they couldn't just sit back and hope the creature went away. With a confident smirk, he asked his agent to trust him as much as he trusted his own clones. But Junmo was consumed with worry. The protagonist closed his eyes, his focus narrowing as he activated the familiar skill. The link connected to his remaining clones. Number 1 and number 2, who were deep inside a dense forest within the hunting grounds. Treading carefully, Sang commanded them to the last known location of number 3. The 2 clones were on high alert, poised and ready for battle. They communicated entirely through gestures and silent signals, taking care not to make a single sound. A sickening crunch echoed through the trees. the sound of teeth tearing through flesh. They had found their target. The beast was feasting on some unlucky creature. This was a perfect opportunity. Our protagonist never imagined he'd get the chance to strike first. He knew his own stats were E-class at best, and his clones only inherited 53% of that, making them F-class hunters. But the monster was distracted, and he had to trust his clones' combat instincts. From the depths of his heroic heart, he believed this was a fight they could win. The boy gave the order aim for the monster's head. His clones opened fire, determined to obliterate this abomination. Bullets hammered against the fishman's skull, but they couldn't even pierce its hide. The clones were left utterly dumbfounded. Sang was just as shocked. In an instant, he realized conventional bullets were useless. That first volley only served to enrage the monstrous beast. With a furious roar, it launched itself into the air, leaping several meters high. It came crashing down between the two clones, who barely managed to scramble out of the way. One of the clones instantly turned his frantic dodge into a counterattack. He flipped over the monster's head, slashing his sword across its shoulder. He managed to open a tiny wound on its skin. Sang was shocked. It was just a small scratch, but the monster would not let it slide. It spun towards the clone, preparing a vicious attack. The blow slammed into a tree instead. The clone had dodged it, by the skin of his teeth. The creature's massive size made its swings clumsy in the dense woods. As the other clone kept firing, the monster's sword became lodged in the tree. The attack's power was immense, but the fishman simply flexed, shattering the massive tree with ease. Sang sent a warning to his clones. "Forget what I said. This beast can easily wield its sword in this terrain." The shattered tree trunk crashed to the ground with a thunderous boom. This monster was far more challenging than he imagined. But his clones felt no fear. They charged forward with unbreakable courage. They managed to land a blow on the monster's arm, but it had absolutely no effect. Sang watched from afar, realizing their attacks were futile. The giant monster clenched its jaw, pouring every ounce of its strength into its massive arm. It was preparing a punch. The blow connected, sending a clone flying. Our hero felt a wave of despair. How could they possibly win with such ineffective attacks? But then, a flicker of a memory. The bullets hadn't been completely useless. One bullet had ricocheted, but another had left a tiny mark. An idea sparked in his mind. Aim for that exact spot. Concentrate all fire on the existing wound. Through his skill, he guided the next shot. It struck true. The monster flinched in pain. Sang realized it was a brilliant plan. Now, he had a path to victory. They would riddle this fishman with bullets. Wounded, but not beaten. The beast roared and charged, swinging its massive fist. Both clones dodged the attack and immediately resumed their barrage. The monster's body began to look like Swiss cheese as it screamed in agony. The attacks were finally working. The fishman gripped its sword tighter. Suddenly, a torrent of flame erupted along its blade, transforming it into a sword of fire. The monster's eyes burned crimson, glowing with pure, unbridled hatred. Utterly enraged, it raised its flaming weapon, preparing to unleash hell on the clone before it. The clone managed to block the strike with his arm, but the impact was devastating. He felt the full force of the incredible blow. The beast's power had suddenly skyrocketed. It began to swing its sword wildly from side to side, swatting at the clones like they were flies. Sang's mind raced, wondering, could the sword be the source? Was it amplifying the monster's power? Sang deduced that the monster was critically wounded, now running on a final, desperate surge of power. Seizing the opening, the fearless clone drove his blade into the monster's chest, carving out a fresh wound. But the beast refused to yield, charging with all its might and landing a devastating sword strike right through the clone's stomach. Sang recoiled, a phantom agony searing through his own body from the shared link. The clone gritted his teeth, grabbing the very hand that impaled him. Through a trembling voice, Sang admitted he knew this would be a bloodbath, but it was a necessary sacrifice. The clone summoned a dagger, preparing one final all-or-nothing strike, letting out a primal scream as he lunged forward. He exploited the close range, viciously stabbing the beast's chest in 3 vital spots. Enraged, the creature retaliated, its claws slicing through the air. But the clone, burning with peak determination, miraculously deflected the lethal attack with his bare arm. Fueled by this unyielding spirit, he relentlessly pressed his assault. The colossal fish was finally on the defensive, desperately trying to create distance. It raised a gigantic foot, preparing a powerful kick, and slammed it square into the boy, sending the clone flying backward. Wounded and bleeding, the clone clutched his stomach, trying to hold on. But the monster wasn't done, charging again with its flaming sword. In a heroic display of teamwork, the other clone threw himself directly into the path of the attack. Before the beast could land its killing blow, he lunged forward, dagger aimed at the villain's heart. The air crackled with tension. The distance closed in an instant. A flurry of blows was about to be unleashed. But in a flash of brilliant strategy, both clones struck the massive fish at the exact same moment. That single, unified blow was enough to make the monstrous amphibian feel the true meaning of pain. Its massive body, now more whole than flesh, began to fail. Its vigor vanished as it crashed to its knees with a ground-shaking thud. And then, with a final groan, it collapsed face first, utterly defeated on the battlefield. The clones were horribly injured, but they were victorious. They were so drained they couldn't even stand. One of them finally gave out, collapsing to the ground. He glanced at his weapon. Empty. The hunt was over. The exhaustion was so profound, Sang felt his own life fading. But just then, one of the clones noticed something. A trail of bloody footprints was forming on the ground, leading away from the carnage. The clone's eyes widened in absolute horror, as if he'd just witnessed a specter rise from the grave. That abomination wasn't dead. Sang ordered number 2 to follow the trail, only to realize the tracks were heading straight for the portal's entrance. Meanwhile, outside the dungeon, a guard was informing a hunter that a monster had just emerged. Entry was impossible. The hunter cursed his luck, but the guard was firm. No one was going in. Juno watched the commotion, silently urging Sang to hurry. Suddenly, a strange sound echoed from the portal. The local guards sensed the shift in the air, immediately calling for backup and alerting their chief. And then it appeared the very monster Sang had fought, now charging furiously towards the portal's exit. It was a whirlwind of rage, wasting no time as it unleashed an attack on the guards. They opened fire, desperately trying to halt its advance. But their bullets might as well have been raindrops, having no effect whatsoever. Its sword began to glow with malevolent energy as it reached the portal, cutting through the helpless guards like they were nothing. Still inside the dungeon, clone number 2 was determined to end this. He readied his last weapon, aimed, and with a final surge of strength, hurled it at the fleeing monster's back. At that very moment, the real Sang burst from the portal, knife in hand, lunging at the beast. He poured every last ounce of his strength into the charge, plunging the blade deep into the monster's head, right beside its eye. The beast let out an earth-shattering scream of pain. The surrounding soldiers were frozen in shock at the terrifying spectacle. Sang channeled all his power into his arms, using both hands to drive the knife even deeper. The soldiers could only stare, their mouths agape and eyes wide with disbelief, as if they were witnessing a god. Our hero finally brought the colossal beast down. It crashed onto its back with him still on top, overwhelmed with emotion. Number 2 gave a thumbs up, tears of relief streaming down his face. Nearby, a man with a goatee spoke into his phone, confirming his arrival. Clad in a tactical vest, he promised to send a detailed report after a full investigation. As he approached the crowd, he noticed the impossible. A D-rank monster lay on the ground, unconscious, its body riddled with critical wounds. A new figure on the scene instantly recognizes the grotesque beast. It's the dreaded fishman. A soldier approaches him. "Sir, from the association." The man confirms it, his gaze cold. "Report. What happened here?" Still reeling from the shock, the soldier explains, "A hunter, trapped inside before the lockdown, was the one who slayed this monster." The official's eyes narrow. "There was a D-rank hunter present." "No, sir," the soldier replies. "It was simply a hunter who defeated the beast." Frowning, the man demands, "Tell me everything."
"We're still investigating. But from what we've gathered, it was an F-rank hunter and his clones who killed it."
The man's face remains a stoic mask, but inwardly, he's staggered. An F-rank taking down a D-rank monster. And every single attack was focused on one devastating wound. This wasn't brute force. This was a calculated takedown, achieved without any high-grade weaponry. While Sang chats with his agent, the official is lost in thought. How is it possible to strike a moving target with such inhuman precision? The mysterious man casts a piercing, unfriendly glare toward our main character and his agent. He decides his first priority is to confirm. If any other D-rank threats remain in the portal, the fishman's corpse lies still. Yet, its huge, sinister eyes remain wide open. Approaching the portal's shimmering veil, the man wonders how he'll report this anomaly to the association. Meanwhile, the protagonist is reviewing his incredible gains. A rush of new skills floods his system. First up, dash, a burst of movement speed. Next is projectile, boosting his attack power with a pistol. He's also unlocked regeneration and the powerful strike skill, which focuses all his strength into a single devastating blow. On top of it all, his core stats, strength, dexterity, and endurance have all received a significant boost. As he tends to his wounds, he realizes what a massive haul this was. He hopes his clones, number 1 and 2, survived thanks to their shared regeneration skill. The clones took a beating, but Sang has a plan. Letting them heal naturally should help level up his regeneration stat even faster. Junmo showers him with praise for defeating a D-rank monster, making the young hunter a little flustered. "With this power," the agent declares, "you could hunt E-rank monsters solo, no problem at all." The boy's mind flashes back to the battle, to the monster's short sword. He walks to the corpse, pointing. It had a sword that absorbed the red liquid from its own body. Sang recounts how the beast's eyes glowed red, how it went berserk with terrifying strength after the sword drank that crimson fluid. But as our hero reaches for the weapon, Junmo's hand shoots out, stopping him. Let a clone handle that, he warns. It could be a cursed item. Sang's eyes widen. Cursed items. Can I not use them? The agent explains that depending on their effects, these forbidden items can be worth a fortune. That single word fortune ignites the boy's excitement. He quickly agrees to let a clone retrieve it later, while the collection team handles the beast's corpse. Then, a thought strikes him. He asks his agent if the other item he found, the one from the monster's head, is also valuable. He pulls a strange object from his pocket. The moment Junmo sees it, his jaw hits the floor. He is utterly speechless. It's a large, crimson stone, the size of Sang's palm. But tragically, it's a low-level gem. In other words, completely worthless. The boy's face is beaming with such pure excitement that Junmo finds it hard to break the bad news. He explains it's a cheap stat-boosting item, but the side effects make it unusable for humans. In that instant, Sang's hopes of a big payday are utterly crushed. But the agent quickly adds that the other items from the beast could still fetch a very high price. So don't be too disappointed, he says with a smile. The protagonist entrusts the collection to him, offering his sincere thanks. Back at our hero's apartment home sweet home, he pushes the door open. His two injured clones limp inside, leaning on each other for support. They collapse onto the floor, barely processing the day's events. He decides to summon number 3, telling the other two to get some rest. Sang focuses his energy, activating his skill, to call forth another copy of himself. In a shimmer of light, a brand new Sang appears before him. He hands the clone his gear and gives him a simple order: go train. He peels off his own disgustingly filthy clothes, then sits on the floor, ready to inspect his loot: a sword and a stat-boosting stone. These were the 2 items he secured for himself. He picks up the stone and pulls out his phone to do some research. It's a strength gem, and just as his agent warned, it's completely unusable for humans. Worse, if used by a summoned being, it turns them into a monster. The tiny stat boost of 0.005 is hardly worth that terrifying side effect. He knows that normally, his clone's injuries and stats don't transfer to him directly. But there's always a chance that the one who transforms into a monster might not be one of them. In his mind, a horrific vision unfolds. He sees himself with the head of an alligator, screaming for his agent. His terrified agent responds with a gunshot, straight to his head. It would be absolute chaos. He places the stone back on the floor, deciding to leave it for now. His attention then turns to the mysterious new sword. But he recalls the stern warning his agent gave him. To test for a curse, he'll have a clone touch it first. He brought the box without issue, but he wants to test the blade before he sells it. So, he commands number 2, the clone in peak condition, to retrieve the sword. Obeying his master's will, the clone approaches the box and extends his arm. He grasps the hilt and raises the weapon high. Sang watches, intrigued. Number 2 hasn't exploded or turned into a frog, but he reports hearing a voice. Sang asks if the voice is coming from the sword, to hear it for himself. He activates his familiar skill. A hideous voice assaults his mind, like a machine gun barking orders, demanding death and rivers of red. The mental barrage was so violent that the familiar skill shattered. A sharp pain lances through the boy's ears. Despite its intensity, the voice has no effect on the clone. Sang wonders if he himself would be overwhelmed if he held the blade. For now, he decides they will use it, and the clone agrees. Instantly, a status window materializes, announcing that regeneration has been increased. The main character looks at his resting clones and realizes the sword is boosting their recovery. But he's concerned. He can't take them hunting. They're completely exhausted. Therefore, he orders them to meditate and unlock mana breathing. Closing his eyes, the boy begins to concentrate, deciding that tomorrow, he will return to campus. The next day dawns on the sprawling campus of Song's University. Students walk about peacefully, living their ordinary lives. Thrown back into his study routine, the boy feels his vacation vanished in the blink of an eye. He checks his status screen, wondering if leveling up made time fly by. In that short period, his stats had skyrocketed, thanks to his clones who never knew rest. He walks through the college hallways, lost in his own world. He realizes he's still just a lonely nerd, since no one has even bothered to speak to him. But as he enters the classroom, a familiar sight catches his attention. His friend Kim Jong-go is sitting at a desk, waiting. At the same time, they both shout in surprise at being in the same class. Kim explains he only signed up because he heard the professor was an easy grader. He leans in closer, asking if Song is still working out. Meanwhile, 2 girls whisper in utter disbelief, asking if that's really Sang, who used to be so chubby. Soon, all the girls in the room are gossiping about the main character, some even plotting to ask him on a date. Kim just chuckles, saying he's a celebrity now. The boy finally understands why nobody greeted him. Pointing at his own face, he asks his friend if he's really changed that much. The big guy says he's pretty sure Sang's own parents wouldn't recognize him. Sang is stunned and admits he was actually planning to go home. Kim adds that he almost didn't recognize him on the street either. The big guy suggests they go for drinks after class, but Sang reveals he already has plans. This news makes the big guy shriek like a little girl. He's in total shock. Our protagonist explains he already made a promise, so he can't possibly go. Yelling loud enough to be on the evening news, Kim demands to know if he has plans with a girl, causing the entire classroom to stare at them. As it turns out, his friends Chan Woo and Jong Sang are in the same class, too. Kim is still screaming that he'll remember this day forever, even as the professor enters the room. At the World Hunter Association, also known as the WHA, the Oracle delivered a prophecy of disaster. President Michael Harris immediately requested further details. He was informed that a portal was predicted to open, unleashing hundreds of monsters to invade. When Harris demanded the specific location and date, he was told the invasion would involve A-rank monsters and was forecast to strike South Korea. In another location, a man in a sharp suit known as Park Want, the master of the third-ranked guild, arrived for a meeting. He was immediately greeted with a headbutt by a woman named Mio, another guildmaster. Mio joked that he had grown the mustache just to flirt with her, admitting she found it rather appealing. Afterward, the pair entered the meeting room. Inside was a member of the Heathen Guild, the very same man who had mocked Sang before. He was already busy taunting another guild member about a recent expedition to Odin's Tower. The Heathen Guild member sneered, asking if the man's team had failed to come back, or if their results were just pathetic. A white-haired man tried to de-escalate the tension, stating that this wasn't the time or place for such remarks. The provoked man's face flushed with anger, but their confrontation was interrupted by an elderly man entering the room. He was the leader of the Korean Hunter Association. At his entrance, the room fell silent as everyone took their seats. He thanked them for attending and warned them of the coming disaster. When asked about the timing, he confessed that they had no specific details. All they knew was that it would involve A-rank monsters and a deadly curse somewhere in Korea. "How are we supposed to protect the entire country?" a guild member roared, slamming his fist on the table. The association leader's calm voice cut through the chaos. "That is precisely why we have gathered here today." Murmurs of doubt filled the hall. With barely enough hunters for routine jobs, guarding the nation seemed impossible. Then, one man rose with a proposal. He suggested a bold strategy. Each guild will form a dedicated unit to defend a specific region. If a breach occurs, all units will converge on that location. No exceptions. He added a grim warning. Any guild that refuses will face severe consequences. The leader scanned the room for any objections. Hearing none, the motion passed with unanimous consent. Later, as Sang was leaving college, he noticed a female student being cornered by a pushy stranger. The man was shamelessly demanding her number, but she shot back with a cold retort. "You're ugly." Seeing Sang approach, the student had a flash of inspiration, suddenly acting as if he were her boyfriend. She quickly latched onto his arm and pulled him away. Once they were safe, she explained the creep had been harassing her, so she had to improvise. "And just for the record," she added, "I don't actually have a boyfriend." Sang noticed her casual clothes. "Why aren't you in uniform?" he asked. She smiled. "It's my birthday." She then tilted her head. "So, why are you staring at me?" A memory suddenly clicked. He knew her. He was her teacher. In that instant, a system notification chimed another 50 million won earned. Sang turned to her and said, "Let's eat. Order anything you desire." He brought her to a premium steakhouse. Her eyes widened as she saw the prices on the menu. "This is way too expensive." Sang just waved it off. "Don't worry, my boss is paying." He then ordered another round of their best dishes. But in the middle of their meal, an emergency alert blared from the restaurant's television. The broadcast was terrifying. A monster portal breach was currently active in South Korea, and their very region was in the danger zone, elsewhere. Sang's friends grumbled about him ditching their party, assuming he was out on a date. Right on cue, Sang appeared before them, looking unusually cheerful. Their reunion was cut short as a deafening disaster alert screamed from every phone in the vicinity. His friends immediately confronted him. "So this is why you bailed on us to meet up with your girlfriend." The accusation made the young woman beside Sang blush intensely. "She's not my girlfriend." Sang calmly corrected them. "She's my student. I bought her a meal to thank her." He then formally introduced them. One of his friends, Daladal, handed the student a gift of meat. "Here, share this with your parents." She thanked him for the kind gesture. Sang's friends watched, impressed by his calm and collected attitude. The student looked surprised that their time was already up. Sang explained gently, "With this alert, your parents must be worried." His friends wanted to hang out longer, trying to keep the group together. But Sang was firm. "Everyone, go home immediately. It's not safe." His serious tone convinced them, and they quickly departed. As he walked, Sang saw people leaving bars, drunk and laughing. For a moment, he wondered if he was overreacting. His phone suddenly rang. It was a man named Genmo. "You got the alert, right?" "I did," Sang replied. "What's the real story?" Genmo's voice was grave. "This situation could last for 3 months. We don't know where the monsters will appear," he continued. "And the creatures we're expecting are on another level of dangerous."
We're anticipating A-rank monsters. If one spawns in the capital, the death toll will be unimaginable.
Sang's blood ran cold. If the threat is that severe, why isn't the government issuing a full-scale warning? "Because they can't shut down the country for 3 months, Genmo explained. "The national economy would collapse." And in that moment, Sang understood the chilling truth. The vague alert wasn't for the public's safety. It was a liability waiver for the Hunter Association. When tragedy struck, they could simply claim they had issued a warning.
The hunting fields are closed, Genmo advised. Find a shelter and stay put.
After hanging up, Sang checked his clone status. Clone 1 was fine, but Clone 2 was heavily damaged, though not yet destroyed. He saw that his skill cooldown was complete. It was time to resummon Clone number 1. He dismissed the active unit and summoned a fresh one to take its place. Then, he headed for his parents' home. "I'm home," he called out as he opened the door. But his mother just stared at him, a complete stranger. His appearance had transformed that much. "Mom, it's me, Sang Wu," he said. Recognition finally dawned on her face. Even his father had to look twice before believing it was his son. Just then, his sister, Kyung-do, appeared from her room. "Hey, shouldn't you greet your amazing sister first?" she joked. At first, Sang didn't even recognize his own sister. His mother invited him in, but her eyes narrowed at the masked figures trailing behind him.
Sang explained the shocking truth. They weren't his friends. They were his clones.
As Sang and his identical copies entered the house, he confirmed his ability. He had awakened his powers just 1 month ago. His mother gasped, exclaiming she never thought her son would become a hunter. His sister, however, was overcome with pure excitement. His father simply acknowledged the fact. There was now a hunter in the family. Sang admitted he didn't want to hide his new life from them any longer. But his mother immediately interrupted, her voice filled with worry. This path was too dangerous to reassure her. Sang explained his clones handled all the fighting. He promised that he was never in any personal danger, telling her not to worry. After that revelation, the mood shifted. Sang urged his family to pack for an immediate evacuation.
A catastrophe was unfolding as they spoke, and they needed to get to the nearest shelter. His father, however, seemed to doubt the severity of the situation.
He questioned the sudden alarm, remarking that he still had work he needed to do. The next day, Sang understood the grim reality. His family had no idea of the true threat looming over them. Their calm behavior proved they thought this was just a minor incident with a few low-level monsters.
With his family still packing, Sang decided to stay home with them for the day. He lied, saying he got a message that his classes were canceled.
Later, the family started cooking dinner with the high-quality monster meat Sang had brought. A relative gestured to the clones, asking if his friends would be eating as well. Sang replied that the clones would only be getting rice. Good meat shouldn't be wasted on them. So, the clones were served buckets of rice, while the family prepared to feast on steak. During the meal, his sister asked if he'd get fat again with 4 of him eating. He responded that he wouldn't, since he burned an incredible amount of energy now. The family shared a peaceful moment, remarking how long it had been since they'd all gathered for a meal like this. In an instant, a massive explosion tore through the world outside. The shockwave slammed Sang into the ground. When he opened his eyes, the building around him was destroyed. Beyond the rubble, countless giant monsters swarmed the area. Then, a colossal dragon-like creature appeared, instantly escalating the chaos into a true nightmare. The monster began gathering terrifying energy, its jaw glowing with intense heat before unleashing a beam that incinerated everything in its path. Sang looked back in horror to see his entire family lying unconscious on the floor. He spotted the shattered equipment of clone number 1 and realized it must have sacrificed itself to protect them. Amidst the wreckage, he saw clones number 2 and number 3. The latter was missing an entire arm. Now, with only one heavily damaged clone and another maimed, Sang told his father the terrifying truth. A portal had opened, unleashing this hell upon them. The city streets were scenes of pure carnage. A huge green monster held a person, preparing to eat them, while others were crushed beneath cars. Winged creatures dominated the sky, snatching screaming civilians from the ground. Sang quickly packed a supply bag and strapped a piece of armor to his sister. She then asked if the clone with the missing arm was okay. Sang forced a smile and assured her that it was fine. At that moment, another explosion erupted nearby as a monster crashed down from above. The portal was in the sky, causing beasts to rain down upon the city. Sang had been lucky. He was on a floor of the building that hadn't completely collapsed. He killed the fallen monster, his mana instantly refilling. But when he tried to open a door to escape, he found it was jammed shut. Sang turned to his father, his voice determined. I'll force it open. He hoisted a massive piece of debris, then combined his strike ability with a powerful kick, shattering the obstruction below. The scene that greeted them was one of utter devastation, filled with bodies, destroyed vehicles, and slain monsters.
Sang asked how far the nearest shelter was. His father replied it was about 2 kilometers away, but pointed to the hordes of monsters blocking their path.
His sister suddenly remembered something. She knew of an underground tunnel that could be a much safer route. Just as they started to move, a desperate cry for help echoed from the distance. They saw a man trapped under rubble, with a hulking D-rank troll standing directly over him. Sang's father grabbed his arm, his voice urgent. Be rational. We can't help anyone else. We have to focus on our own survival.
Sang was torn. He wanted to save the man, but he knew his injured clone number 3 was in no condition to fight.
That left only number 2 to protect his family, and he knew he couldn't risk his own life. Not now. A desperate cry for his mother echoes through the chaos. Nearby, Sang's heart hammered against his ribs as his own mother begged him to run. Sang commanded them to get downstairs and lock the door. He assured them, Number 3 will protect you.
Number 2 is coming with me, he declared. His sister's voice cracked with fear. Are you insane? You're going to get us all killed?
But Sang's resolve was like iron. I am a hunter, he stated coldly, and hunters do not retreat. Grabbing a makeshift club, Sang charged the monstrous beast head-on. It was a troll, and he plunged the splintered wood straight into its eye. He then roared to number 2, Get the injured man to safety. Our job as hunters is to slaughter these monsters.
Sang bellowed a challenge at the enraged troll. But from the shadows, another monster watched intently, perfectly mimicking Sang's words with chilling intelligence.
As the battle raged, number 2 frantically tore away the heavy rubble. He pulled the trapped man free, asking, Can you walk? The man shakily got to his feet, whispering in disbelief. I can't believe I'm still alive. Facing the towering troll, Sang yelled, Number 2, arm yourself. He tossed his companion an object called the Devil's Rock and gave a single command, Eat it. The moment the clone consumed the rock, his body erupted in a flash of crimson light. He transformed into a demonic creature, a wicked sword blazing in his hand. Sang had to be sure. Are you still on my side? The demonic clone simply nodded. He was. Even the giant troll paused its rampage, utterly bewildered by this sudden demonic transformation.
At that same moment, Sang's strength stats skyrocketed with no side effects. He smirked, preparing to face the troll alone.
The beast dragged its colossal mace along the ground, then hurled a massive boulder. But Sang was faster. The monster swung its giant hand, then its sword, grievously wounding the clone. As it lunged again, Sang charged forward, realizing it was slower than his previous foe. He landed a solid blow to the troll's face, but the creature's severed hand instantly regenerated to block the attack. The troll retaliated with a devastating swipe, sending Sang flying into a pile of rubble. That regeneration is the key, Sang realized. He commanded his clone, disable its legs. The demon slashed the troll's muscles, forcing the beast down to one knee. Seizing the opportunity, Sang leaped forward, stabbing both of the monster's eyes with deadly precision. The clone then crippled the other leg to immobilize the beast completely. The massive creature collapsed, twisted and crying out. Not in rage, but in fear, Sang leaned closer, trying to understand the creature's cries. But his power activated on its own, unleashing a devastating strike skill on the monster's skull. The backlash left Sang and his clones utterly exhausted as a system window appeared. It showed a massive gain in his stats, but it also revealed the cost. His hand was nearly destroyed from the skill's recoil. Sang painfully pushed himself to his feet. Time to find my sister. He noticed his phone was missing and asked his second clone to get it back. But suddenly, another explosion ripped through the city, signaling the true beginning of the invasion. The world descended into absolute chaos. Alien ships filled the sky, armies clashed on the ground, and a giant, Godzilla-like creature continued its path of destruction. From the heavens, beams of energy rained down. Rank 9 magic from the legendary Red Flame Guild, slamming into the creature's head. Elite hunters poured into the war zone, including a confident warrior named Magner. A voice boomed from a ship. We have arrived on site.
A hatch hissed open, and from it emerged Park Hwan-ta, the guildmaster of one of the world's top 3 guilds.
On the ground, a tank aimed its heavy weapons. A scout rushed to the new arrivals, shouting, The kaiju is getting away. Too many hunters are focused on it. He begged them. We need to find a different target. The battlefield was a grim collage of bodies and broken golden armor. Amidst the chaos, some celebrated small victories, while others wept for their losses. One man was even grinning from ear to ear, despite the fact that his partner had just died beside him. The man was nothing but a scumbag. Nearby, a gang of opportunists had surrounded a group of survivors. But Sang and his squad stood as their protectors. Watching from a distance, Park Hwan-ta was impressed. Sang was actually holding his own against the horde, but he knew it couldn't last. With only 2 clones for support, he's going to be overwhelmed. He gave the order. Head north, prepare for rescue. A team member activated a winged flight pack, and they soared into action. Sang knew he was in a desperate situation. After defeating a massive creature, he was completely exhausted. He saw a mother and her daughter huddled nearby. He yelled to the civilians, "Head for the underground shelter, I'll buy you some time." The crowd protested, crying out, "You'll die if you stay." But Sang simply ordered his clone, "Cover the rear," as he escorted the people to safety. As they fled, goblins swarmed from the alleys, and Sang had to intervene to save a man from their claws. But the fight was a struggle. He was so low on energy from his last attack, he couldn't even activate his skills properly. Then, a flock of huge, black, bird-like monsters descended from the sky. Sang barely dodged a projectile of black fire launched from one of the creatures. The attack careened towards the civilians. Sang screamed an order to his clone, "Use your body as a shield and protect them." But before the beast could strike again, a colossal tiger plummeted from the heavens, utterly crushing it. His energy completely spent, Sang's world went black. When he awoke, a powerful man stood over him.
With a casual flick of his wrist, the man sent a nearby monster's head tumbling to the floor.
He was Partarda, a legendary guildmaster. "Is everyone all right?" he asked calmly. Still dazed, Sang could only ask, "Who are you?" Meanwhile, in the underground shelter, his sister declared she could wait no longer. She had to find him. His 3rd clone blocked her path. "My orders are to prevent your exit," it stated coldly. She tried to push past, but the clone's strength was absolute.
Her parents begged her to stay, but she was consumed by worry. Sang should have been back by now. Something was terribly wrong.
Her father revealed he knew Sang's secret. "He's a hunter now," he said with grim resolve. "All we can do is trust in him."
Suddenly, frantic banging echoed from the shelter door, along with desperate cries for help. The survivors hesitated. The door was protected by a code only residents knew.
But Sang's sister, clinging to the hope that Sang had sent them, threw the door open. An injured man stumbled in, his eyes glowing with a sinister light. The intruder was revealed to be a screaming firefly, a vicious Class B monster. The shelter erupted into pure chaos. The creature lunged straight for Sang's sister. In a flash, the one-armed 3rd clone moved to intercept, becoming her final shield. It thrust its weapon at the monster's head, but the attack failed. The creature's claw impaled the clone in an instant. The devastating strike pierced straight through the clone's body, and right into Sang's sister.
Her parents watched in horror as their daughter collapsed to the ground. Clone number 3, with its last ounce of strength, grabbed a weapon and triggered the fire sprinklers.
It kicked the monster back outside, sealing the door to protect everyone within. Elsewhere, the guildmaster, Park 1. Ta approached Sang. "My apologies for being late," he said, offering a hand to help Sang up. Sang recognized the famous name, shocked by the sheer pressure of the man's aura. He introduced himself, thanking the man for saving his life.
Park 1. Ta simply replied, "No, thank you, for saving all of these people."
The other survivors praised Sang's heroism, but he humbly brushed it off. Park 1. Ta observed him closely, remembering how Sang had simply materialized out of thin air. He wondered just who this boy was, and what kind of power he wielded. He cut straight to the point, asking, "Are you a hunter?" Sang admitted that he was, but confessed he was still new to this world. Park 1. Ta then pressed him, "What is your ability?" Sang froze. Revealing his unique power was a massive risk, but he owed this man his life. But just as he was about to speak, he felt a sudden, violent severing of his mental link to clone number 3. He knew instantly what it meant. Snatching a sword from the ground, he screamed, "My family is in danger," and bolted towards the shelter. Park 1. Ta understood the urgency in his eyes. He ordered his rescue team to stay and secure the survivors. As Sang sprinted, the demon sword in his hand began to whisper twisted commands into his mind, urging him to kill. He gritted his teeth, fighting to keep his sanity as he pushed his dash ability to its absolute limit. In another part of the city, a hunter with a mustache fired a powerful flame bullet at a giant monster, but the attack simply fizzled out. Other hunters focused their magical power on a single point, desperate to find a weakness. But their combined assault was useless. Even a poison-laced sword couldn't pierce the creature's thick hide. As they realized they had to work together, a new hunter appeared, scoffing at the very idea of teamwork. The others recognized the arrogant newcomer. "I'm just here for the reward money," he sneered. He declared that someone with his overwhelming power had no need for cooperation. As he spoke, he unleashed a devastating attack, a technique that rained down like a meteor shower from the heavens. Back in the shelter, Sang's father frantically tried to stop his daughter's bleeding, crying out for a doctor, for anyone to help. Sang's mother was paralyzed by despair, watching the life drain from her daughter's eyes. Suddenly, a spark erupted from the reinforced door. Something had burned straight through the lock. The small monster crawled back inside, wounded. With her fading breath, his daughter urged him to run. Then, the cursed firefly spoke through the dying girl, using her voice to beg for its own life. As her parents stood frozen in horror, a new figure appeared in the doorway. Sang's eyes met his father's. To the old man, this was not his son. This was a being possessed by a terrifying, murderous aura. The sight of his sister bleeding out on the floor shattered what little calm Sang had left. A storm of pure rage consumed him. He became a blur of vengeance, lunging forward and severing one of the monster's arms with a brutal slash. But the beast struck back in the same instant. As Sang roared in agony, the monster seemed to smile, delighting in his pain. Just as before, the taste of blood awakens the blade's curse, driving its wielder deeper into madness. Before the fight could truly begin, the multi-legged beast closed the distance, lunging straight for Sang in a flash. A colleague intercepted the attack, saving him from certain death. Then, another powerful figure arrived, a man named Want. With the monster still looming, Sang's strength gave out, and he collapsed into Wante's arms. Wante unleashed a devastating flying kick, sending the creature soaring into the distance. The female hunter who helped first screamed that Sang's injuries were catastrophic.
A horrifying truth became clear: Sang's arm was gone, and he was slipping into a berserker rage.
She desperately attempted a mana transfer, but his life force was draining away uncontrollably. Wante demanded to know his condition. "It's bad," she cried. "He's not going to make it." She urged Wante to finish the monster immediately. "From the brink of death?" Sang's voice emerged, barely a whisper. He spoke of his sister, giving them her location and pleading with them to save her instead. But Want grabbed him, promising, "You're both going to live." He told Sang to hold on, that this would all be over soon. With those words, Sang's world faded to black. Meanwhile, at the Hunter Association, chaos erupted as panicked voices screamed for an immediate evacuation. But before an official disaster could be declared, the leader of the #1 guild arrived for a meeting. This man argued fiercely against going public, knowing it would paralyze the entire city. He warned that the exact timing of the catastrophe was still unknown. Announcing it too early would wreck the country's economy, and the association would take all the blame. The chief asked what he proposed instead. The guild leader's suggestion was chilling. "We tell the public nothing." He argued this would shift the responsibility onto anyone who chose not to evacuate, making it their own fault. The association chief stared in disbelief. That would be a death sentence for thousands. The guildmaster simply smirked. "I see those casualties as a necessary cleansing." To him, anyone unawakened or below D rank was utterly worthless. He placed a heavy hand on the chief's shoulder, his tone making it clear this was not a request. The scene then shifts back, focusing on Sang and his clones. While his clones trained with relentless intensity, the real Sang was just kicking back and eating snacks. Suddenly, a man named Junmo contacted him, warning Sang not to rely solely on his copies for training. Junmo told him he was wasting his God-given talent, the potential to become a legendary hunter. But Sang just brushed him off, saying everything was fine. Sang admitted he never wanted to be a hunter. All he cared about was making money. Hearing this, Junmo's expression hardened. He asked if money was really worth everything, if that shallow goal was truly enough for him. That night, Sang was dragged into a nightmare, seeing haunting visions of his fallen family, especially his sister, who cried out, begging him to save her. He jolted awake from the dream, his body utterly drained. Want was at his bedside. "A nightmare?" he asked. "Don't move too much." Sang could only nod, every inch of him screaming in pain.
Wante relayed the doctor's verdict. His condition was critical, the wound terrifyingly deep. He was impossibly lucky to be alive.
Sang offered his gratitude, but Want waved it away, saying there was something important they needed to discuss later. Just then, the door burst open. Sang's parents rushed in, their faces masks of pure terror.
"Our daughter!" they cried. "Is she gone?" A doctor reported Sang's surgery was a success, but he would need constant monitoring as he recovered. He learned that 4 entire days had passed since the portal first tore open the sky. The major threats had all been eliminated, with only a few low-class stragglers remaining. Sang confessed he couldn't remember a thing before passing out. Then, his thoughts turned to one person. "My sister. Where is she? Is she okay?" But his question was met with a heavy, deafening silence.
As everyone avoided his gaze, their heads hung low. Sang's voice grew desperate. Why is no one talking? Is she in a hospital bed? Finally, the doctor spoke. Her wound was treated, but she was infected by the monster's mana virus. It's a terrifying kind of curse, a parasite that feeds on a person's life force. Normally, it's harmless. The virus dies when it meets an incompatible mana signature. But in the rarest of cases, a person's mana is a perfect match, meaning they can never live a normal life again. How do we cure it? Sang demanded. The doctor's next words were like a death sentence. As of now, there is no cure. The only slivers of hope were an S-class healer known only as Bless, or finding a legendary healing item from beyond the portal. The doctor warned him that either path would cost an astronomical fortune. Hearing this, Sang's world shattered. A crushing weight of guilt slammed into him. He chose to save others when he should have saved his own family first. He was haunted by thoughts of what could have been. If only he were as strong as Want, or possessed the power to save them all. The regret was crushing. He should have fought harder. Sometime later, a young woman entered his hospital room. He asked if her family was safe. She confirmed they had reached a shelter just in time. She explained that a mutual friend gave her his family's contact info after she heard he'd been hospitalized. The visitor wished him a fast recovery, saying she still had much to learn from him. But Sang interrupted her. He had something crucial to tell her. He declared that he was dropping out of college. 2 weeks later, Sang was discharged, his recovery almost supernaturally fast. Before he walked out of those hospital doors, he had told her about his sister's dire condition and explained that he could no longer be her tutor. He apologized for everything, but she simply said it was fine before she left. Yet her last words to him were anything but simple. She revealed her plan to enroll in the very same college he spoke of, and to find a new boyfriend while she was there. She delivered a final warning, don't even think about coming back to her once she had moved on. But Sang pushed her words aside. Her drama meant nothing compared to his immediate goal. He was heading straight for a dungeon. In the taxi, Sang researched the captain of a powerful guild he intended to join. Soon, he stood before the massive headquarters of the Canis Guild. As he stepped inside, a receptionist approached him, asking how she could help. Sang stated his purpose plainly. I'm here to meet the captain. The receptionist immediately asked if he had an appointment. Sang replied that the captain himself had requested his presence. Even so, the receptionist insisted that an appointment was mandatory. Before she could say more, a booming voice cut them off. A huge, bearded man asked for Sang's name. Sang affirmed that he was the one the man was expecting. The giant then ordered the receptionist to let Sang pass, declaring that he was an honored guest. He told Sang the captain was waiting. Sang was then led to a room where the captain stood, mesmerized by a painting on the wall. A knock broke the silence. Sang's arrival was announced, and the captain granted him entry. The captain's face showed immense relief at seeing Sang alive and well. He asked how on earth he had recovered so quickly. Sang answered that he only survived thanks to the captain's timely intervention, which saved him from far worse injuries. The captain brushed off the compliment, claiming he only did what anyone in his position would have done. But Sang knew better. What the captain had done went far beyond mere duty. He pointed out that the captain hadn't just saved him, but had rescued his entire family, ensuring all of them received urgent medical care. A simple thank you wasn't enough. Sang looked him in the eye and asked for his true motive in helping him so much. Sang brought up the private hospital room, the financial support for his parents, and the specialized ICU his sister, Ju, was in. At the question, the captain's hand clenched into a tight fist. The truth was finally revealed. He, too, has a sister, one who went missing with her entire team. He confessed that in Sang's desperation, he saw a reflection of his own fear of losing his family. Sang understood the sentiment, but felt a sense of unease. So he asked why the captain had called for him so soon after his recovery. The captain's gaze intensified. He needed to know about the secret ability Sang had kept hidden. He asked directly if Sang's clones were solid, physical entities. Recalling the clone that had sacrificed itself to protect a civilian, Sang confirmed it was his power, and he never intended to hide it. Now that it was out in the open, the captain made his real request. He asked Sang to help him rescue the Canis Guild's first team. He made it clear this was not a demand to repay a debt. It was because he believed Sang was the only person alive who could save his sister and her comrades. Then, the powerful guild captain bowed his head to Sang. That single gesture struck Sang deeply, reminding him of his own desperation as he begged for his sister's life. He realized the roles had been reversed. It was his turn to be the savior. Sang agreed to give it his all. Sang asked what he needed to do to begin the mission. In response, he was taken to a massive training facility. The captain explained that this was a unique situation. His sister possesses an incredible ability to generate survival supplies, buying them up to 8 months. But he also gave a stark warning. The dungeon they had to conquer was an incredibly high-level threat. So high, in fact, that an entire team of elite B-rank hunters had entered, and never came out. The gravity of the mission finally sank in. The captain looked at Sang and stated a harsh truth. As he was now, he wasn't nearly strong enough for this task. His current stats were dangerously low, and his unparalleled combat sense could no longer be his crutch. It had already reached its absolute peak.
Sang's words were met with stunned silence. A heavy sense of worry had been gnawing at Jimt ever since Sang asked for a break, and then completely disappeared.
Now, Sang had stumbled back into his life, looking like he'd been through a war. Jimt demanded to know who was responsible. With a heavy sigh, Sang admitted he'd been beaten, and began to recount the hellish events of the past few days. Jimit's mind raced, fixating on a critical detail. Sang's sister had been infected, yet Sang himself seemed completely untouched by the curse. "I'm fine," Sang confirmed, his voice flat. He then revealed he had taken on a new mission, one from Kina's guild. After Jimt's grim nod, Sang made an odd request. He needed him to save a new number for clone number 2, explaining his old phone was destroyed. Jimti suggested simply restoring the contacts from a backup, but Sang's refusal was swift and cold. When asked about his friends and connections, Sang simply replied, "It's for the best." Jimt, changing the subject, pressed again about his brutal injuries. Sang finally confessed the truth. "I'm training, under a man named Huan Ta." Training? Jimit exploded, horrified by Sang's condition. He threatened to report this supposed training to the guild immediately, but Sang stopped him, explaining that his master, Wua, was desperate, driven by the same burning desire to save his own sister. Then, Sang revealed his new strategy. He was bringing his clones into the fight. The next day, Sang arrived for training, bringing a single clone to face Wua. Both the original and the clone were mercilessly crushed. The following day, he brought 2 clones, and all 3 were utterly defeated. The day after that, he returned with 3 clones, but even the 4 of them were no match for Wua. Jimt watched as Sang tended to his battered duplicates. Sang finally admitted it aloud. Wua's strength was on an entirely different level. He explained that even perfectly mimicking his opponent's moves was useless. The gap in their raw power was simply too massive to overcome. But in the depths of his despair, a new strategy sparked to life. Sang approached Genma for permission, and without knowing the details, Genma gave him the green light. At the training ground, Wua greeted them with a mocking grin, asking if they weren't tired of being beaten into the ground yet. His eyes then narrowed, noticing something new. Sang had given his clones a mysterious substance provided by Jimt. The empowered clones stood ready, crackling with new energy. Wua, also known as Taiwan, demanded to know what he'd done. Sang simply told him to stop talking and start fighting. After the first clash, Wua had to admit, this was no longer a one-sided beatdown. He quickly analyzed the change. Normally, the clones possessed only half of Sang's power, Shaz, but the elixir had boosted their stats to a level nearly matching the original. However, after landing a clean hit, Wua found their weakness. They may have gained power, but they'd lost their most crucial advantage, precision. Slashing through his foes, Sang told himself he hadn't become a monster. He then drew a gun and fired, but the man simply brushed the bullet aside. The opponent retaliated with a devastating blow, sneering, "A mana bullet like that could never hurt me." Sang unleashed a flurry of complex techniques in response. But despite his desperate struggle, he was ultimately defeated. Standing over him, the victor offered a lesson. Simply hitting hard wasn't enough. One had to unify their mana with their sword. Though he was still just a C-rank hunter, Sang had absolutely no intention of giving up. His burning motivation didn't come from his enemy's words. It was fueled by the chilling memory of waking up in a hospital, completely helpless. In that moment, he had been forced to entrust his family's safety to another, and the shame of that memory had reforged his very soul. He despised his past weakness and was now determined to never stop climbing, to never stop evolving. 6 months later, at the Silong Station hunting grounds, a hunter was sent flying through the air. A group of loudmouths were trying to force their way into the area when a guardian suddenly appeared to block their path. One of the thugs challenged the guardian, claiming he'd paid his fee. The guard simply called him an idiot. He then informed the group that these grounds belonged to the Silver Moon Guild. Out of nowhere, Sang appeared, striking one of the men and knocking him to the ground. He coldly questioned why they were interfering with his guild's business. Enraged, the rest of the thugs surrounded Sang. They proudly identified as D-rank hunters, asking if he really thought he could take them all on by himself. Sang let out a small smirk. "Who said I was alone?" And with that, he summoned his entire squad. The hunters were defeated in an instant. Meanwhile, late that night, Wua paid a visit to Junmo. Junmo asked for the reason for this unexpected visit. Wua simply handed him a file. The document detailed Sang's initial statistics and showed his unbelievable evolution over the past 6 months. Wua remarked that Sang's growth rate made him seem like a different species. Junmo got straight to the point: was he strong enough for their plan? Wua admitted he'd prepared a backup plan, but it was no longer necessary. Sang's growth had been nothing short of monstrous. He pointed to the data. Sang's strength stat had skyrocketed from 1.44 to 19, and his regeneration skill had awakened from 0. Sang knew the time had come. The rescue mission was a go. Besides, his clones were already proving stronger than their stats suggested. At the dungeon entrance, he was already deep in a brutal brawl with several hunters. A guard tried to intervene, demanding he cease at once. But Sang shot back, declaring they started it first. He then ordered his clones to crush their phones, severing their only link for backup. The other hunters saw the chaos unfold and wisely decided to find another dungeon. Stepping inside the Sealdong Station hunting ground, Sang stumbled upon a lone figure clutching a gem. When questioned, the man simply called himself a collector. The man recognized Sang, but Sang cut straight to the point. "You're far too weak for a D-rank dungeon," he stated, "and that gear is useless for a real hunt." His eyes then caught another person scavenging nearby. It all clicked. They were trapped here by the Silver Moon Guild. Sang's expression remained as cold as ice. He demanded to know everything about their situation, to prove the guild members outside were no longer a problem. He showed the man a photo of the defeated hunters at the gate. The collector's eyes widened in shock. To think Sang had taken down D-rank hunters? Sang silenced him with a look and again demanded the truth. The man began to explain that in certain dungeons, a brutal ecosystem exists where monsters war against each other. The Silver Moon Guild preys on the weak, trapping them inside to scavenge for the spoils. Freedom comes at a price, an impossibly high gem quota. It's a system designed to trap them, burying them under a mountain of debt. He added that if anyone died while scavenging, their lives were treated as completely worthless. With that, Sang told the man he could go. But just as the collector turned to leave, overflowing with gratitude, Sang stopped him and instructed him to leave the gem. Sang took the prize and tossed it to his clone. Number 1. His order was simple: consume it. With the area clear, Sang began his own hunt for gems. But his work was cut short by someone fleeing for their life from a terrifying C-rank monster. Just as the beast was about to land a fatal blow, Sang moved like lightning, shoving the person to safety. The individual he rescued demanded to know who he was. Sang's reply was simple: "I'm the one who saved you." But as the monster closed in, panic took over. "You led it right to us," she screamed. "Sang just told her to stay calm." Then, her eyes landed on the powerful form of Sang's clone, and mistaking it for another threat, she tried to bolt once more. Sang grabbed her, stopping her dead in her tracks. "Now," he commanded. "You're going to tell me everything." While onlookers screamed in terror at the beast's arrival, Sang's clones had already engaged it in a fiery battle, the clash echoing with explosions. Even when one of his clones fell, Sang remained unfazed. He simply questioned the fallen clone. "How could you lose after consuming so many gems?" He then commanded the clone not to move an inch. "Remember the resources I've poured into you. I need to focus." Without another word, Sang drew a cursed blade and, in a flash, severed one of the monster's arms. He then unleashed a storm of merciless slashes against the creature, a relentless assault that seemed to overwhelm its senses. But the sword's curse began to seep into his mind, triggering a haunting memory of the monster that took his sister. For a moment, the memory threatened to shatter his focus. The creature swung its remaining arm in a desperate attack. Sang's response: he unleashed a legion of 50 clones to block the blow. Then, with his cursed sword, he brought it down, slicing through the massive limb. After the dust settled, Sang muttered to himself, "I really hate using this weapon." The young woman who saw it all stared in disbelief. Did you really defeat that thing all by yourself?" Sang confirmed he did exactly what he said he would, before turning his attention to his primary clone. Sang walked over to his first clone, assessing its condition. It was gravely injured, and the wound showed no signs of healing. The woman explained that the creature's bone sword was cursed. Any wound it inflicted would never close on its own. "We need a healer," she stated urgently. Then, looking closer, she asked if the clone was even human. Sang simply confirmed that it was. The woman admitted she first thought it was some kind of troll just wearing a cap. After a brief hesitation, she offered Sang a potion. "Give this to him," she said. "It should help." Sang took the vial, his eyes narrowing. A tiny skull floated within the liquid, making him seriously doubt its safety. But with no other choice, he administered the potion to his clone. Instantly, a dark smoke, thick with venom, poured from the clone's body. Sang watched, noting the treatment appeared to be working. But even as the clone recovered, the woman explained it was only temporary. She warned that its life force would now slowly drain away over time. She then revealed her unique ability, poison conjuration, a skill that allowed her to craft all kinds of powerful potions and poisons. This concoction, she clarified, wasn't poison. It was a potion, but a deadly one. She warned him that the clone's life force would plummet at an alarming rate. With its time now limited, Sang turned to his shadow and gave a single, urgent command hunt. The woman's gaze hardened. She had revealed her ability. Now it was his turn to pay the price. What was he? How could he command monsters? She'd never seen a B ranker wield such terrifying power.
Sang calmly corrected her, stating he was merely E rank. The woman stared, utterly shocked. An E rank hunter surviving in this death trap? It was madness.
He cut her off with a single look. Relax, he commanded, his voice low. From now on, I'll be the one asking the questions. Meanwhile, back at the YOLO Guild's warehouse, several members were busy hauling crates. They called out to a young woman. Her face flushed as she worked. Another guild member approached, questioning the massive pile of items she'd gathered. The woman explained that a man named One Tag had requested a favor. The other woman couldn't help but wonder. Why would Sang need a mountain of stones? Was he planning on eating them all? Later, on a quiet train ride, the woman from the fight replayed Sang's cold reaction in her mind. Was he dangerous? The thought terrified her, but she decided to take a leap of faith. Trying to seem composed, she told him he could talk to her if he needed to. Sang turned to face her, a single thought crossing his mind. Her suspicions were amusingly foolish. He stood abruptly, getting straight to the point. The Hyung Guild, he stated. You mentioned them when you were running.
She looked stunned. How could any hunter not know their name? Sang admitted he was new to this world and demanded to know about their illicit activities.
The woman finally confessed that Silver Moon was nothing but a puppet, a front created to handle the Hyung Guild's dirty work. She added that the entire operation was controlled by a man with a mustache. His mind flashed back to another victim they had ruthlessly destroyed. Sang's eyes narrowed. Were you captured by them too? She refused to answer, stating he didn't need to know. He had the information he needed. Sang announced it was time for him to continue hunting. She asked why he was leaving so soon. If you don't want to stay, he told her coldly, then find your own way to the gate. He turned and walked away, remarking that her ability was indeed impressive. In response, she admitted she hated her power. It was stained with side effects and was made for one thing, killing. Sang then offered her Juno's contact card. He told her to call the agent if she feared the Hyung Guild and needed a safe place to go. He added that the agent shared her deep-seated hatred for the guild. And with that, he left to hunt monsters. As he departed, Sang felt a pang of regret. He should have tried harder to persuade her. That poison ability would be incredibly useful for his clones. During his next fight, clone number 1 suddenly collapsed and dissolved into nothing. So this was the side effect. Sang immediately recognized it as a massive drawback. As soon as the skill's cooldown ended, he resummoned the clone, which appeared completely naked. After ordering it to get dressed, he resumed the hunt. But unseen by Sang, 2 massive figures watched him from a distance. They were some of the very hunters he had forced out of the area while they were gathering gems. Deciding to search for their own treasures, they stumbled upon a shimmering puddle of refined liquid crystal. The men gasped. A small amount was worth 100 times more than ordinary gems and could raise a person's stats by 0.5. However, they knew the terrifying risk consuming it raw would transform the user into a monster. The blonde-haired man felt the stat boost wasn't worth the price. But his partner mentioned an illegal organization, DP, which processed these forbidden items for human use. Since DP bought every gem they could find, their suppliers became fabulously wealthy. Realizing the fortune that lay before them, the 2 men decided to return the next day and claim it all. Just as the men closed the door and left, it swung open once more. The woman who had been with Sang appeared in the doorway. She'd been followed by his clone, but had expertly given it the slip. She immediately began snatching up all the valuable items in the room, stuffing them inside her clothes. A chaotic crowd was rushing nearby, and she blended in seamlessly, making her escape. The clone didn't even notice she was gone. Meanwhile, Sang continued to amass a fortune from his hunt, only to be interrupted by an urgent message. The day after those hunters found the liquid crystal, they returned to the dungeon, unaware that Sang had just been summoned to Ken's guild for a mission briefing. They arrived to find the worst. The crystal was gone. In a blind rage, one of the men seized a guard by the neck. Useless, he snarled, his voice thick with fury. Who did you let into this sacred place? The terrified guard could only stammer the truth. The only ones who entered were Sang's group, and the evacuees who followed. Hearing that name, the man's grip faltered. He remembered the overwhelming presence of Sang and his team. How could he possibly challenge hunters on that level? Elsewhere, under the cloak of night, a lone survivor was on the move. A wave of relief washed over her. If she hadn't met Sang, she knew she would be dead. She'd even managed to snag some gems from the chaos. But as she paused to admire her prize, a business card fluttered from her pocket. She picked it up, and Sang's words echoed in her mind.
Your ability is impressive, he'd said, offering her a place on his team, a number on a card. But her relief quickly soured into scorn.
What an idiot, she muttered, as if a few words of praise were enough to make her call him. Meanwhile, at the guild meeting, Towan began the briefing. The mission concerned Odin's Tower, the very place where Team 1, including his sister, was currently imprisoned.
The name seemed to confuse Jinmo.
Sang asked for more details, and Talwan explained. Odin's Tower is a unique dungeon with an entrance, but no known exit. Its only connection to the outside is a flow of mana, making telepathy the only way to communicate. He continued, stating that the only escape routes are completing the dungeon, or using a teleportation skill. A realization sparked in Sang's mind, his cloning ability. He could send his clones inside to gather intelligence. So that's the plan, he asked Tawan directly. You need me to do this. But Sang had another question. Why hadn't the legendary Team 1 managed to escape on their own?
Taewon's face darkened. He admitted they had provided the team with an escape method before they left. Wan then stepped forward, ready to reveal the tragic story of how they became trapped.
His tale began 5 years ago, just before the end of the 2005 disaster. It was then that his sister awakened a powerful subspace storage skill. In those dark days for humanity, her ability was a miracle, storing supplies and even saving lives. Together, they survived countless dangers. His sister's strength grew, forging her into a fierce leader who eventually commanded Team 1. Wan remembered warning her, insisting it was too reckless to enter Odin's Tower without a teleporter. But his sister argued that they'd tried and failed to recruit one. Besides, they were more than prepared with scrolls. She was determined, claiming they had to conquer the tower now, or their guild would be left in the dust by their rivals. To prove her point, she showed Wan their mountain of supplies. Though his heart was heavy, she convinced him. The team departed. A friend tried to comfort Wan later, telling him to trust his sister, to trust his own judgment as guildmaster. That was the same day he made the public announcement Sang had witnessed as a child. A cruel twist of fate, as Wan called it. Junmo then broke the silence, asking if they'd tried to make contact. Wan explained they had taken 10 telepathy scrolls just to send reports back. For the first few weeks, communication was normal. But after a month, everything went wrong. In the communication tent, an operator prepared a scroll to receive the team's message. But what came through was something no one could have ever predicted. Taewan's voice grew grim as he continued the story. He spoke of the day his team used a scroll to contact the trapped heroes inside. Suddenly, a teleportation portal tore open beside them. The first man to stumble out was a vision of horror. A gaping wound ripped across his stomach, and blood streamed from his mouth. At that moment, Taewan recalled every shred of hope they had was utterly shattered. The wounded survivor collapsed into his comrade's arms, who screamed for the medical team. At the same time, the portal began to violently flicker, threatening to close. Is the telepathic link still open? A woman shouted. A man confirmed that it was. Tell them, she commanded. A rescue team will arrive at 2 o'clock this afternoon. Be ready to leave. As medics worked frantically, the wounded man could only apologize. He gasped that a new, unknown monster had appeared inside the tower. Despite their power, not even the highest-ranked healers could treat his wounds. Taewan could only stand there, frozen by the horrific scene. Words failing him, the telepath's voice trembled, preparing to channel the final words of the lost team. He relayed their heartbreaking message, a confession that they had failed the mission. While they once believed victory was possible, they now pleaded for the rescue party not to be reckless, promising they could still hold on. Their last words echoed with desperate resolve a vow to return alive, no matter what. Taiwan revealed that after the incident, countless hunters were approached, but none dared to enter that cursed tower, from which only a single teleporter had escaped. Back in the present, Taiwan looked Sang dead in the eye, convinced he was the one who could finally reach the trapped squad. With that heavy confirmation, Taiwan declared the rescue mission a go, promising a full guild escort to the tower's entrance. But before they faced that hell, they would first make a stop at a bar known as Paradise. Elsewhere, Yang, the brutal leader of the Silver Moon Guild, unleashed his fury on his subordinates. These were the men he had ordered to imprison the weak, forcing them to mine for stones in the dark. They stammered an excuse about a strange hunter, someone not even on the Class D list, who had single-handedly destroyed their operation. A Class E hunter, Yang roared, his fists raining down again. How could they be so utterly useless? He reminded them that the Hyang Guild's patience was wearing thin. Their orders were clear: find that man and drag him back. The Silver Moon Guild was now on the hunt for Sang, though their leader, Yang, privately expected his pathetic subordinates to fail. Watching from the sidelines was another man, identified as Kong Shinyeon, the vice leader of the Silver Moon Guild. The following day, Sang confided in Jetmo, admitting his suspicion that Taiwan wasn't telling him the entire truth. He couldn't shake the feeling. What were their real motives for clearing Odin's Tower? Sang admitted he didn't know much, but he recalled what the jumper George Lucas had said: the tower had already been cleared back in 2012. He remembered the media frenzy at the time, with everyone demanding to know about the tower's legendary rewards. But Sang recounted Lucas's chilling announcement. Odin's Tower was empty, with just one monster left inside. Lucas had claimed there were no treasures or items, warning all hunters not to risk their lives on a pointless endeavor. As this sank in, Jetmo offered to investigate, but Sang waved him off. Just then, their conversation was cut short as the agency door creaked open, revealing a woman. It turned out she had been sleeping inside the building the entire time. When Jetmo asked who she was, Sang simply said he had called her there. As Jetmo moved closer, the woman instinctively recoiled from him.
Her first words were a simple request for food. Once she had eaten, Sang asked if she was there to work for the JM agency.
She confirmed it. Jetmo demanded to know her skills, to which she replied, "Item appraisal and potion making." Sang then added a chilling clarification her potions were lethal to anyone who drank them. Now, sporting a new haircut, Sang explained the genius of his strategy. These deadly poisons were perfect for use on his clones.
The plan finally clicked for Jetmo. He welcomed her aboard and immediately began to gather supplies for her lethal concoctions.
With the matter settled, Sang stood up to leave, announcing he had more important things to handle. The woman assumed he was going dungeon hunting, but Sang corrected her, stating his purpose was different this time.
In response, she simply tossed him a few mana and strength potions.
A suspicious Jetmo immediately questioned her about the potion's side effects. Her answer was horrifying. The strength potion dissolves muscles, while the mana potion causes the user to explode. Sometime later, Sang gathered his group outside. He told them it was time to move out, motivating them with the promise of a feast when they returned. The promise sent a wave of excitement through them. Meanwhile, a woman was securing a collection of jewels in the guild's storage. But as she went to report her progress, she discovered the entire facility had been completely ransacked.
Shocked, she wondered who had the nerve to rob the YOLO Guild. She immediately activated a detection skill, locking onto the thieves' location. After confirming their position, she tore open a portal, jumping in hot pursuit.
But she leaped straight into an ambush. A man named Kanjine beat her down mercilessly, offering a cold apology. He explained that his group needed the jewels, then asked his accomplice if they had secured everything. After getting confirmation, Kanjine gave his final order finish the job and burn the building to the ground. The jewels they had just stolen were the very same ones Sang needed for his own critical mission. The scene shifts to the frozen plains of Iceland, where Sang and his companions arrive by spacecraft. They stand before a shimmering portal, the gate to Valhalla, which connects directly to Odin's tower. At the gate, the guards announced an unexpected guest. A man was waiting for him.
Sang stepped through the shimmering portal and found himself on a stone path floating in a star-filled void.
The bizarre landscape threw him off balance. This was no tower. An intense cold bit at his skin as he spotted the guild's supply depot. But instead, chaos reigned. The guild's entire jewel stash was gone. Its members were frantically discussing the heist.
The moment Sang appeared, the mood shifted. Hope filled their faces as they greeted him.
They quickly gave his clones warm jackets for the freezing climate before the group prepared to move out. Their target was 40 kilometers from the entrance, at the exact spot where the last team went missing.
Sang raised an eyebrow. The distance wasn't as great as he'd imagined. How could it have taken the first team a whole month to get that far?
Wanta's expression grew grim. It wasn't the supplies that slowed them down, he explained. It was the endless swarms of monsters. With that warning, he handed Sang 3 protective scrolls for his clones. Sang passed the scrolls to clones number 4, 5, and 6, declaring, "You 3 are crucial to my strategy." He asked how to activate the scrolls. The answer was simple, just tear them. Each one was magically linked to a preset location. A woman in the depot offered a vital clue, adding that Team 1 was set to investigate a specific zone at 2 p.m. She urged him to search for signs of a recent battle there. Her gaze met his. "Do you have any other questions?" Sang's response was unexpected. He asked what Wanta would like for dinner. If Sang returned safely with his sister. Wanta smiled faintly. A home-cooked meal, with swords drawn and potions ready, the team of 5 set off. The mission had officially begun. But Sang himself stayed behind, taking a seat to activate his familiar ability. Back at the depot, a tense Wanta knew everything now rested on Sang's shoulders alone. His connection to his familiars flared to life. The link was perfect. His summoned warriors marched forward, cutting through the raging blizzard. The storm was a relentless enemy. Progress was brutal, even with his innate resistance to the biting cold. Finally, he reached Odin's tower, which loomed beside what looked like a frozen city. As he arrived, Sang felt a strange shift deep within him. He suddenly realized he now had complete and direct control over his main familiar's body. His familiar skill had reached level 17, evolving beyond simple sensory sharing into a state of total physical command. This new level of control was on a whole other dimension. Before, he gave mental commands for his familiar to follow, but now, it was as if he was inside the body himself.
Harnessing this powerful new connection, he commanded his squad to press forward.
As the mission truly began, he glanced back only to see the path behind him had vanished. There was no retreat. Just then, the first monster appeared, a massive ice bat. His familiars made short work of the creature, dispatching it with ease.
Sang didn't join the fight. He stayed back, observing and analyzing his foes. He noticed the bats always attacked in groups, led by a stronger boss monster. When the bat boss finally revealed itself, Sang reached for his sword.
But his familiars were faster. They annihilated it before he could even move. After the effortless victory, the team pushed onward, carving a path through countless more bats. They tore through 13 kilometers of hostile territory.
A quarter of the journey, completed in record time. But then, a new threat emerged from the snow, hulking yetis wielding massive clubs.
Sang was ready. He unleashed a magic projectile in an instant, scoring a direct hit on a yeti's head. He immediately deployed his familiars in a battle formation, 2 tanks on the front line, with 3 providing support from the back. The fight was over almost before it began. The yetis were crushed without any trouble. This lack of challenge felt strange, but he couldn't deny it to himself. So far, everything is perfect. The moment he thought it, disaster struck. The ground beneath his familiar shattered and gave way. Meanwhile, in a different location, a woman in a tent asked a man named Won-ta if he was truly sure Sang would be safe.
Won-ta simply told her not to worry.
He revealed his original strategy, a small infiltration team to rescue key people, followed by a much larger force. However, Sang's growth rate had shattered all of their expectations. In just 6 months, his stats had skyrocketed by nearly 20 points each, pushing his power to the level of a rank B hunter. Won-ta also pointed out his role as a CLLO in the US Air Force. The woman's eyes widened in understanding. So his personal strength is equal to an entire rank B team. Won-ta nodded in agreement. And he would be even stronger, he added, if the Yolaville warehouse raid hadn't failed. The woman considered this. Then besides the ice golem, nothing on this first floor can stop him. Won-ta confirmed he had already warned Sang about the golem, and he was confident that Sang had what it takes to handle it. Model.
Sang found himself teleported into a domain brimming with peril.
For the brutal clash ahead, he sliced his own finger, anointing his blade with blood. He then unleashed the empowered weapon against a colossal ice golem, but the blow was useless, failing to leave so much as a scratch. The golem retaliated with a crushing headbutt, but Sang narrowly dodged the blow. The harsh reality settled in his strongest weapon was completely ineffective.
All around him, the battlefield seethed with chaos and countless hostile creatures.
The great golem devoured one of the monsters, then extended its massive palm. Sang immediately grabbed hold, being lifted into the air. Weaving through a storm of enemy fire, Sang watched in awe. The golem was wiping out the monsters far more efficiently than his own clones. A seed of suspicion was planted in his mind. He remembered the warning. To defeat this guardian, he had to shatter the yellow core in its chest. But as his magic bullets glanced harmlessly off the core's surface, Sang frantically searched for another way. The golem raised its arm for a devastating overhead strike. Sang roared at his clones to scatter. He dodged the falling debris, but it couldn't evade the punch that followed, though it wasn't aimed at him. Instead, it pulverized his clone. Number 5. Seeing his double destroyed, Sang knew time was up. He had to use a teleport scroll. In that instant, a desperate plan ignited in his mind. He charged the golem as it dragged away the remnants of his clone. As the monster's jaws opened wide to consume him, Sang activated a skill in his legs. He lunged forward, escaping death by a hair's breadth as its teeth snapped shut behind him. His remaining clones watched in horror. But Sang was safe. Lying on the ground, he smirked at the enraged beast and asked if it enjoyed its little snack. The truth of his gambit was revealed. The golem had swallowed the teleport scroll whole. A flashback revealed the genius behind his strategy. In the moment clone number 5 was destroyed, he realized, if you can't break the core, just teleport it away. The scroll activated inside the golem, ripping open a portal that targeted only its living essence. The core vanished, and the stone behemoth crumbled into dust.
With the golem defeated, a wave of power washed over him. His strength, vitality, dexterity, and mana all received a massive boost.
His clone skill even leveled up, a skill that had been stagnant for far too long. He decided against summoning a replacement for now. Meanwhile, far away, a man named George Lucas was enjoying a bath. His digital assistant projected a list of individuals requesting an audience with him this month. His face darkened as he scanned the list. Any requests from the South Korean guilds, he demanded. The assistant confirmed there were none. Absurd, George Lucas muttered, a smirk playing on his lips. How the tables have turned? Reject every single one, he commanded. Proceed with the inauguration ceremony for the new academy. The scene cuts to a man named Baldy, who is suddenly confronted by the same thug Sang had previously defeated. The man sneered. I finally found you. Baldy, how did you get away from those Silver Moon bastards? He demanded. Baldy's expression was unreadable as he replied, I had some help. He then noted that their companion, Changwan, was exhausted. Suddenly, a loud knock echoed, and the door was thrown open. A man named Kanjin stormed in, sending a heavy-set man flying with a single punch. Who was it? He roared. Who attacked the Silver Moon members in the hunting grounds? He warned them that they were the third group he'd visited, and the other two had played dumb. With a chilling smile, he wondered aloud if this group would prove to be just as useless. The heavy-set man activated a skill and swung at Kanjin, who blocked the attack without even flinching.
Kanjin's cold eyes locked onto his victim. He crushed the man's hand and slammed him to the floor.
Dragging him back up, Kanjin delivered a sickening punch to his head, and blood erupted from the wound.
Stop, a bald man screamed, promising to tell him everything. Kanjin feigned confusion for a moment, then smashed the man across the face.
You were going to talk one way or another, Kanjin sneered. Don't act like you're doing me a favor. He leaned in close. Why are you protecting this trash? He's going to die anyway. Another brutal blow sent the bald man down, and Kanjin raised his foot to stomp him. The man shrieked in terror, finally breaking. Stop! I know who it was. I know who attacked Silver Moon. As the man begged for his life, Kanjin declared his simple philosophy, any problem in the world can be solved with your fists. The man was about to reveal Sang's name, but the scene shifts to a frozen wasteland, where Sang and his clones continued their journey. The air grew heavy. Sang knew they had to move with extreme caution. He noted the chilling silence. There were no monsters, only a grim trail of corpses. Retrieving these bodies would be an impossible task. What kind of beast could cause such a massacre? Sang turned to a clone. What's our position? The clone confirmed. We're close to the target coordinates. He gave the order. Search for any signs of battle from Team 1. I want a full report by 2. Suddenly, a clone lunged in front of Sang, a sickening thud echoing as it intercepted a blade meant for him. Out of thin air, a monstrous creature shimmered into existence. Sang's mind raced. How did it appear from nowhere? It had to be an invisibility skill. The only clue had been faint footprints in the dust. In an instant, they were surrounded. A whole pack of these phantoms materialized, and Sang knew these were the butchers responsible for the graveyard of bodies. He reached for his dagger, but a powerful blow sent him stumbling backward. Before the creature could press its attack, a clone moved like lightning, its blade slicing deep into the monster's flesh. The battle raged as more invisible horrors appeared, becoming solid only in the instant they attacked. But somehow, his clones were parrying every unseen blow. He needed to understand this phenomenon. He relinquished control of his body to his primary clone, Number 1. Now, he was merely an observer. Number 1 immediately summoned a cursed sword that pulsed with dark energy. Though the weapon's malevolent aura seeped into him, he seemed unfazed. He blocked an invisible strike, then sensed another from behind and cut it down without looking. He had figured it out. He wasn't seeing them. He was reacting to the whisper of wind from their swinging blades. Sang realized with a jolt that this was a level of mastery he couldn't just copy. He still had so much to learn. Meanwhile, trapped deep inside the dungeon's subdimension, a hunter addressed his captain. It's almost 2 o'clock, he said gravely. We have to face the situation. The captain rose, her face etched with despair. I have no more words of hope left to give. She was sure today would be just like all the others, starting with the familiar sound of cracking ice. But then, she heard something new. Outside, Sang was frantically trying to decipher how his clones could perceive the unseeable. The creatures themselves weren't overwhelmingly strong, but their perfect stealth made them a terrifying threat. His clones were covered in countless wounds, yet the swarm of enemies never seemed to shrink. It was impossible to know how many were left. Just then, a portal tore open in the fabric of space. That was it, the attack team's location. Sang immediately ordered all his clones to charge toward it. From within the portal, the captain saw a figure approaching. The group's weary hope flickered, then blazed as they saw more figures behind him. The captain activated a vision skill, and her blood ran cold. Sang was leading the entire horde of monsters directly at them. As he got closer, he shielded his face and roared a desperate plea. I've come to save you. And now, he gasped, I need you to save me. For a tense moment, they were stunned into silence until the captain's voice cut through the fear. All units, engage. Protect that young man, she commanded, as shields and magic erupted around them. A defensive dome materialized while a mage began a powerful incantation. A storm of magic arrows rained down on the pursuing monsters as Sang sprinted for his life. His first clone dove through the barrier just as it sealed, the entire rescue party collapsing in exhaustion. The captain slammed the entrance shut with her shield. She turned to Sang, thanking him. I'm from Rescue Team 1, he panted. The exhausted party members stared blankly, seemingly unimpressed. After a moment, a woman asked, Are you from the Canes Guild? Sang nodded. Yes, Guildmaster Ilta sent me. A wave of relief washed over the man's face. The guild. They didn't abandon us, the captain then asked urgently. What about Xiangta? Is he safe?
Sang confirmed their comrade was alive, but still unconscious from his ordeal.
Sang saw the deep concern in her eyes, but had to press on. We need to leave now, he insisted. Master Ilta is waiting for your return. The woman spoke up. We're ready. I brought teleportation scrolls. Sang's sharp gaze caught a detail. There should have been 10 scrolls. Why is one missing? The woman hesitated, her expression turning somber. I have one last favor to ask of you. One of our comrades died during the mission. She recounted the horrific ambush. They targeted our healer first. Then our eldest member fell protecting us. Her voice cracked with emotion. I want to retrieve his body. We can't just leave him behind in this awful place. During the chaos, she explained, we tore open a portal just to escape with our lives.
But an unseen terror slipped past their defenses, striking down the gatekeeper and forcing the survivors into a desperate retreat.
Sang understood her plea and asked for the body's location. In response, the woman tore open a rift in space, revealing the area. Sang gauged the distance. It wasn't impossibly far. But retrieving the body meant walking straight into a den of monsters. Since his clones could handle the risk, he accepted the dangerous request, but laid down 2 conditions. First, if he sensed even a hint of failure, the mission was off, and everyone would pull back. The group had no choice but to agree. Second, he would handle the retrieval entirely on his own. The others immediately protested, questioning the sanity of going in alone. Sang clarified it wasn't his true body, but his clones, a revelation that shocked the woman. Meanwhile, a man named Kenjin Ho was torturing another man, Junmo. Kenjin Ho knew full well that Sang was connected to Junmo's agency. A sickening crack echoed as he snapped Junmo's arm. The man endured the torment, refusing to reveal Sang's name. But Kenjin Ho discovered a document with all the information he needed. The paper identified his target Jong Sang Wu, a hunter belonging to the GM agency. With Sang's name and home address exposed, his family was now in the crosshairs. They also knew about his cloning ability. The only way to kill him was to find the original. Wasting no time, Kenjin Ho dispatched his men to the address on the document. But what they didn't know was that a mysterious woman was watching their every move from the shadows. She recognized the attackers instantly. They were from the Silver Moon organization. The broken Junmo demanded to know why they were hunting Sang. Kenjin Ho sneered, explaining that Sang had wiped out their crystal harvesting team. When Junmo played dumb, Kenjin Ho called him a stubborn fool. He painted a false narrative, claiming Sang stole their crystals and ran, portraying his own monstrous group as the victims. The truth of the matter was far more complex. The woman with Sang had stolen a priceless artifact, while Sang had merely taken a bag of crystals.
Regardless, her actions had now dragged Sang into this life-or-death situation.
Back in the subdimension, the woman remarked that Sang's cloning ability was unlike anything she had ever witnessed. Sang assured her they were no mere illusions. He told her not to worry about their safety. If they were destroyed, he could simply summon them again. He then laid out the strategy. Clones number 4 and 6 would stand guard at the entrance, a teleport scroll ready just in case. He, along with clones number 2 and 3, would venture inside, grab the body, and return. The woman's skepticism was plain to see. The old man offered his assistance, but Sang firmly refused, saying it was his mission to guarantee their escape. Still unconvinced, the woman challenged his strategy. She pointed out the obvious danger of using monsters to secure their safety. Sang simply stated that this was the plan, and its success hinged on her trust. After a tense moment, she reluctantly agreed to follow his command. Sang then drew his cursed blade. For the past 6 months, he had been devouring crystals to raise his stats, a process that had unlocked a new skill. This passive ability, Monster Devour, gave him a 12% chance to absorb a portion of a monster's stats with every kill. It was the main way he'd grown so powerful, though in his mind, he was still far from satisfied.
Standing before the swirling dimensional tear, Sang gave the order to open it, noting its power was great enough to swallow mana explosions.
He then commanded clone number 4 to hand him a knife. Taking the blade, Sang hurled his sword and a vial of potent demon venom straight through the portal. He gave one final order the moment the body was secured. Everyone was to evacuate. The woman added that the monsters inside the dimension were stationary. They lay in wait for targets, which meant the creatures he brought would also hold their positions. With the strategy set, Sang cracked his knuckles as the portal stabilized. He gave the signal to charge, then plunged headfirst into the breach. He spotted the target's body almost immediately and began closing the distance. But then he saw it, a fresh footprint, signaling that an enemy was lurking nearby. Outside, his remaining clones secured the perimeter, ordering the others to keep their distance. A few of the hunters offered to help, but the sister shut them down. She explained they were 40 kilometers from the main entrance. Sang had to possess a unique method to have traveled so far. so fast. She declared that all they could do now was trust him. Inside, as Sang pushed forward, a creature lunged at him from the right.
He blocked the attack on pure instinct, a move that seemed to catch his ambusher by surprise.
This reflexive defense was a sign of his evolving combat senses. But then he saw the true problem, a massive horde of enemies swarming the woman's body. As he prepared to engage, one of his clones was struck by a vicious slash from behind. Monsters began to close in from every direction, forcing Sang to enact a specific plan. He uncorked a vial and downed a potion, feeling his mana surge exponentially. With this power boost, he unleashed a devastating projectile at a large corpse.
A single attack that wiped the entire area clean of threats.
From a hidden location, the observer stared in disbelief at Sang's mastery of clones, his seamless weapon switching, and the overwhelming power of his attacks. Sang turned to a wounded ally. "Can you still move?" he asked. The man confirmed he could. Sang then gave him a new order to retrieve a specific corpse. But as they moved, Sang sensed it. The corpse's mana was wildly unstable. On the verge of detonating, the body began to dissolve, twisting into a vile form of dark sorcery. Deciding in an instant, Sang became the decoy, drawing all the attention to himself. A menacing aura solidified above him as he was instantly swarmed. Meanwhile, two of his clones snatched the body. Sang roared for his comrades to run, then stomped the ground with earth-shattering force, launching everyone skyward. The clones used this upward thrust to land far ahead of the group, sprinting toward the escape portal. The team escaped successfully. A female member breathed a word of thanks as they began cutting a scroll to seal the gate. But an older hunter stopped them. "Not yet," he warned. "There's still someone on the other side." Sang calmly explained it was only a clone, and its survival could no longer be guaranteed. The clone, seemingly conscious, glanced back at them one last time. As a result of this epic battle, Sang's Monster Devour skill had activated over and over. Through this powerful ability, he absorbed the ice essence from countless defeated creatures, causing his strength, reflexes, mana, and cold resistance to skyrocket. The scene shifts to another place, where a figure is calmly slicing an apple. He speaks to a man named Mr. Xiang Te, informing him the rescue mission was today and might already be over. He urged the man to wake up. At that very moment, Mr. Shantai's finger twitched. Back at the guild base, a portal ripped open. Guild members rushed towards it, anxiously awaiting the team's arrival. But the first thing that emerged was a hand, causing fear to ripple through the onlookers. A young woman recognized him as her brother. Overwhelmed with relief, she broke down in tears. Elsewhere, Sang's consciousness returned to him in a chair. This was the first time he'd ever resorted to such a self-destructive strategy. His sister sat with him, trying her best to remain composed. Hua embraces a woman, telling her to be quiet. "Everything is okay now, you idiot." In response, she finally let her tears flow freely. She confessed that she was terrified, convinced that no one would ever come to save them. She felt the crushing weight of responsibility for what happened to another woman during the ordeal. As they had their reunion, a crowd watched from a distance. In another location, the man who had been hospitalized finally opened his eyes. Later, Sang was reviewing his status window when a clone appeared to return his sword. He smiled, seeing his attributes had risen dramatically. Just then, one Taz approached him. "Mr. Hunter," he said, offering a deep, formal bow of thanks in Japanese. Sang replied that he only took the job for the massive reward. But one Taz dismissed this, making a solemn promise to provide his full support whenever Sang needed it. He made it clear all Sang had to do was ask. Sang later found W attempting to return a scroll he didn't use. W told him to consider any leftover supplies from the mission as his own. Sang flatly refused the offer, insisting the scroll belonged to the guild and that it would feel wrong to keep it. Hearing his conviction, Junmo took the scroll back. His sister watched in surprise, realizing that Sang must have been there with them the whole time. One Taz explained that Sang himself remained stationary, using a familiar skill to command his forces from a great distance. She finally believed it, admitting she thought it was just a tale to calm them down. One Taz watched Sang, pondering just how powerful this man was destined to become. Outside, Sang noted to One Taz that he would surely be busy now. One Taz confirmed it. He had to check on the survivors' health and prepare funerals for the fallen. Suddenly, Sang's phone, which was useless in the dungeon, roared to life with a flood of notifications. He checked the messages and his blood ran cold. Junmo had been abducted by the Silver Moon Guild. The message contained her current location, actively being tracked. A burning rage ignited in Sang's eyes. He turned to One Taz and said, "I have to leave, immediately." When One Taz asked what was wrong, Sang explained that Silver Moon had taken Junmo. One Taz questioned their motive. Sang guessed it was retaliation for their earlier clash at the hunting grounds. Hearing this, One Taz reached into his jacket without a word, pulling out a scroll and offering it to Sang. Sang tried to refuse, but One Taz insisted, reminding him of his promise of unwavering support. Meanwhile, at the entrance to the Silver Moon Guild, a crowd had gathered, lying in wait. From the shadows, a young woman watches the chaos unfold when a voice suddenly calls her name. A man seizes her, his voice dripping with menace as he questions her. But before he can harm her, a portal tears open the air behind them, and Sang emerges. He moves like a phantom, choking one assailant while two of his clones instantly corner another with daggers. The woman is stunned, frozen by the sheer speed of his assault. The sounds of a man struggling violently echoing nearby. "Wait, stop," the woman shouts, urging Sang to halt his attack. "We need to get information from him."
Sang complies, efficiently tying up the assailants before demanding, "Where are the captives?"
She reveals Junmo was taken to the Silver Moon Guild's storage facility. Sang simply tells her to wait right there. As he prepares to move, inside that very building, a beaten and bruised Junmo is held captive by a man named Kangwon. Kangwon looms over him, his voice cold as ice. "Tell me why your little group decided to interfere with my guild." As Junmo wonders if Sang Wu will come to his rescue, one of Kangwon's men reports that Sang Wu is abroad, not due back for hours. Just as the captors relax and consider ordering food, a thunderous impact shatters the door. The metal door, sliced open from the outside, bursts inward. Sang steps through the dust and asks, "Are you from the Silver Moon Guild?"
Kangwon's eyes widen in disbelief. He was certain Sang's arrival wouldn't be for hours.
Some of his men, who clearly know Sang's reputation, nervously ask about his masked companions. Kangwon orders them to capture the clones. A weakened Junmo screams for him to stop, but Sang faces the guild, his expression a mask of pure, unbridled rage. The first man to attack is met with a vicious elbow to the chin that dislocates his jaw. Sang then grabs and snaps his arm. When another henchman tries to intervene, Sang breaks his arm just as effortlessly.
With all his subordinates writhing on the floor in seconds, Kangwon scoffs, calling them useless.
He observes a chilling fact. Sang defeated them all without taking a single step from his original position.
"Hold on," Kangwon calls out, wanting to ask a question as a precaution. "Where did you hide the crystals?"
Sang seems genuinely confused by the question, only recalling that he'd picked up some ordinary-looking stones. He warns Kangwon, his voice turning to ice. "You have crossed a line. This will not end peacefully." Kangwon scoffs, calling Sang the arrogant one. He reveals he investigated Sang's office, admitting his physical strength is impressive.
Kangwon estimates Sang must be at least a B-class hunter with exceptionally high stats.
He continues his mocking analysis, calling Sang's cloning skill useless despite his impressive power. He speculates that Sang's only other ability must be some kind of concentrated attack. That weakness, Kangwon sneers, explains why you're with a low-tier agency. Inferior individuals always flock together. In response, Sang offers only a calm, chilling acknowledgement. Then, more of his clones materialize, and the balance of power shifts completely. The guild members suddenly find themselves at a massive disadvantage.
Kangwon's men grow visibly nervous. One reports that the guards stationed at the rear have already been defeated.
"I was already aware of that, you idiot." Kangwon snaps. With his reinforcements, Sang is no longer outnumbered and now holds a dagger.
Cornered, Kangwon decides to use his trump card and invisibility skill.
One of his men grins, confident in their victory. Only a hunter with a specialized detection skill could possibly counter such an ability. While cloaked, Kangwon believes he's invincible. His skill doesn't just hide him, it completely erases his presence and aura. He moves in from behind for the final blow. But he freezes when he notices Sang's clones seem to be looking right at him. He dismisses it, certain he can't be seen and that the fight is over. Just as Kangwon closes in to strike, Sang gives a simple order to his clones, "Seize him." The clones instantly capture the shocked Kangwon, restraining him before he can even react. Sang then instructs some clones to get the injured Junmo to a hospital. The scene cuts to a bar, where Sang's college friends are sharing drinks. They're celebrating the start of their 3rd year together. One friend jokes that it's still just the 3 of them, asking if any of them ever plan on finding a girlfriend. Another friend, wearing glasses, then asks if anyone has seen Sang Wu, mentioning that he's been out of touch for a while. They confirm he changed his number and isn't responding. A third friend reveals a rumor he heard Sang Wu is now working as a hunter. The news stuns the others. They find it impossible to imagine the kind Sang Wu they knew as someone who kills monsters. But one friend says thoughtfully, "That's probably because none of us have ever seen Sang Wu truly angry." He questions Sang Wu's old neighbor, trying to understand if he had ever seen the man truly lose his temper. The neighbor recalled an incident from their school days, a memory of being cornered by a group of gangsters.
When Sang Wu appeared, his friend screamed at him to run for his life. Instead, Sang Wu charged back in, smashing his head into an attacker.
But the friend made one thing clear. Sang Wu didn't save him. In the end, they were both beaten mercilessly. He would later learn that the same thugs had targeted Sang Wu before. This revealed Sang Wu's true character. Despite his calm exterior, when provoked,
he would charge forward without a shred of hesitation.
The friend concluded that Sang Wu could endure anything himself, but became a beast the moment his friends were threatened.
Back in the present, a shocked Kangen demanded to know how Sang had managed to detect him.
Sang noted Kangen's foolish confidence, explaining that he'd just fought monsters using that exact same worthless skill. Sang threw Kangen's earlier insults back in his face, reminding him how he'd called his skills trash and warned him to stay away. After the battle at Odin's tower, Sang's power had surged. With nearly 10 points added to each stat and his cold resistance climbing to 19, he moved with purpose, launching one of his opponents an incredible distance. His clones reported one enemy had escaped, but all the others had been completely subdued. Sang ordered them to get Junmu to a hospital, telling him not to worry. Nearby, the defeated Kanjin struggled just to rise. He thought back to the official report that listed Sang's strength at only 19, a number that was now a laughable lie. He also realized that Sang's clones were terrifyingly formidable. If even 2 of them caught him, he knew the fight would be over.
Convinced such a power-up was impossible without an item, Kanjin scanned his opponent and his eyes locked onto a potion in Sang's pocket. Kanjin forced himself to stand, admitting to Sang that he had underestimated him, never expecting such a fight.
He vowed he wouldn't make that mistake again, and promised to show him the overwhelming power of a true B-class hunter. His own stats were revealed strength 25 and reflex 35. He roared that Sang had seen nothing yet and rushed forward to attack. Sang simply stated that he had no interest in seeing everything a weakling had to offer. While charging, Kanjin realized his movements were being tracked. It seemed impossible, but they were sensing the very air currents around him. To counter this, he began to move chaotically, deliberately stirring up the air. He created a storm of noise to mask his location. Sang observed that his opponent's new speed would make things more difficult. Yet despite the chaos, Sang turned and effortlessly blocked the attack. He then smashed Kanjin on the head, calling him an idiot. Sang explained that all the smoke and dust only made his position painfully obvious. Kanjin was slammed to the ground, where he suddenly began laughing like a madman. Sang demanded to know what was so funny. Then he realized it. During their exchange, Kanjin had stolen the potion from his pocket.
Kanjin held the vial high, declaring he knew something was strange about Sang's stats and asked if this was the secret to his power.
Sang gave him one piece of advice: it would be better not to drink it. Kanjin ignored the warning and drank the entire vial. His strength stat began to explode, climbing from 29 to 37, then all the way to 51 as the ground beneath him cracked. Empowered, Kanjin mocked Sang, claiming he couldn't even hear him anymore because his own strength had become too great. In response, Sang told him not to place the blame on him for what was about to happen. Sang noted internally that his opponent's strength had more than doubled, a jump that even a top-tier potion couldn't explain.
Kanjin demanded to know who made the potion, promising in return that he might let Sang walk away with at least 2 of his arms.
Sang surveyed the field. He had already sent clones 4 and 6 to the hospital. Now, only he and clones 2 and 3 remained to face this man. Their eyes met. In the next instant, Kanjin charged forward with explosive speed. Sang moved to block him, but Kanjin's raw power knocked the clones aside. Sang tried to counter with his sword, but Kanjin struck first, staggering him. Kanjin loomed over him, asking if he finally understood his fatal mistake. He revealed he had done more than just read Sang's stats. He had also sent people after his family. The scene cuts away to Sang's parents at home, as an unknown person knocks on their door.
Back in the fight, Kanjin stabbed Sang again and again, inflicting countless wounds. The force of the attacks dragged Sang's body across the floor. As 2 more enemies emerged from the shadows, the remaining clones moved to engage them. Bleeding onto his own blade, Sang retaliated with a furious swing that sliced Kanjin's sword in half. Enraged, Kanjin activated a skill and punched Sang directly. Model. The blow sent Sang flying backwards, smashing him into a wall on the far side of the room. In the same instant, another clone was struck hard in the stomach. Kanjin weaved around an attack from behind, delivering a brutal counter to his attacker's jaw. As the battle raged, Sang began to feel a change within him. The potion he'd consumed was starting to awaken. His friends, watching nervously from a distance, commented on Sang's apparent overconfidence. Sang shot them a look, silencing them and declaring he would win. He then asked S if there was a backup plan, but Sang's only order was for everyone else to find cover. Kanjin seemed irritated by Sang's stubborn refusal to surrender. Questioning why he bothered to continue this pointless fight, Sang was merely biding his time, waiting for the potion's full power to activate. Kanjin smugly pulled out his phone, telling S he would order some photos to clarify the situation. He spoke into the phone, asking his subordinates if they had reached the location and ordering them to cut off their target's fingers and send him the pictures. But suddenly, Kanjin lost all control of his arm, dropping the phone. He crumbled to the ground as his body began to grotesquely melt, taking on a slime-like appearance. Sang smirked. The potion was finally working. The potent substance was dissolving Kanjin's muscles. leaving him weak and utterly bewildered. Sang reminded him coldly, "I warned you not to drink it." Overcome with panic, Kanjin desperately scrambled for his phone, planning to call for reinforcements and have them take Sang's parents hostage.
As his arm visibly withered away to skin and bone, Kanjin shrieked that Sang's parents would die unless he got an antidote. However, a voice from the active call on the dropped phone suddenly interrupted him.
The person on the other end reported that Kanjin's men had attacked the wrong family and had blindly stumbled into the Canis Guild's territory.
A massive, bearded man from the guild had annihilated all the intruders. This was the man who had just knocked on the door of Sang's parents. While holding a defeated man in one arm, Sang's father calmly asked about his son's condition. Sang confirmed that he was unharmed. The men outside still seemed ready to fight. But at that moment, the man named Kanjin received a phone call.
After a single glance at his phone, Kanjin let out a horrifying scream as his body began to transform into a zombie-like state. With Sang not even lifting a finger,
Sang grabbed the twisted form of Kanjin, advising him to save his energy just to keep breathing.
he then seized Kanjin's arm, his voice laced with ice, warning him to never again touch anyone he cared about, bringing the fight to a decisive end.
A woman nearby watched the entire scene unfold in absolute shock. Sometime later, Sang went to the hospital to speak with Junmo. Since visiting hours were over, he slipped into the room through the window. Junmo instantly noticed the blood on Sang's face and demanded to know what happened. Sang assured him he was fine thanks to his regeneration ability, but warned Junmo that the group called Silver Moon wasn't finished with them yet. He then asked Junmo for his opinion should he finally undergo a reevaluation for his hunter ranking. Junmo wholeheartedly agreed.
He pointed out that Sang's rank had already skyrocketed after the portal incident, but he had never completed any official reclassification tests since then.
Sang explained that he never used to care about power itself. His only goals were to become strong enough to protect his loved ones and to pay his sister's hospital bills.
Junmo asked what had changed his mind.
Sang explained that if he held a higher classification, like an A rank, Silver Moon would never have dared to attack them or the JM agency office. This was why he now sought a higher rank. Junmo agreed it would be a huge boost for the agency's publicity, but cautioned that it would also attract massive attention and could lead to far more frequent battles. And Sang confirmed that his decision was final. The scene shifts to Sang arriving at a facility to retake his evaluation. An evaluator named Sang Wu, who possessed a cloning skill, asked if Sang had come alone, noting that the test was normally taken by an entire group. Junmo had previously explained that lower-ranked hunters are tested in groups because the monsters are usually stronger than any single hunter of the same rank. But Sang's abilities were a different story.
Sang simply told the evaluator that he had always operated alone.
Sang Wu explained that to be re-ranked. Sang needed to kill a monster one classification above his own and bring back proof to the association. Sang asked if it was possible to skip the D, C, and B rank tests all at once. The evaluator flatly denied the request, stating that a hunter can only register for the test immediately above their current rank.
Sang then asked for his assigned monster.
The evaluator told him to kill a fisherman, warning that its skin was absurdly tough and completely impervious to bullets. After getting the assignment, Sang walked over to a chair, sat down, and started looking at his phone. 2 hours later, Sang Wu noticed Sang hadn't even left for the hunt and wondered if he was serious about the test. At that very moment, Sang stood up and calmly walked back to the evaluator's desk. Sang Wu asked if he wanted to cancel the test. Sang replied that he had already hunted the monster. When the evaluator pressed for an answer, Sang coolly confirmed it. He had already slain the fisherman and submitted the proof. Now, he demanded to be registered as a Class D hunter. The association employee scoffed. Sang had been sipping coffee right in front of him. How could he have possibly completed the hunt? The clueless employee never saw Sang leave. He had no idea one of Sang's clones was already on the hunting ground.
"See for yourself," Sang told him. "The confirmation should have arrived by now."
Reluctantly, the employee checked the system. His eyes widened. Official confirmation Jong Sang Wu had successfully hunted a number 5 fisherman. Stunned by the impossible result, he immediately called the hunting field for verification. The staff on the other end confirmed it all. Sang had been there, and he had killed a monster. "Is the system broken?" the employee muttered in disbelief. Sang, who had been waiting with immense patience, finally asked, "So, are we done here?" The employee, certain some kind of trick was at play, reluctantly agreed to process the upgrade. He officially promoted Sang to Class D, but warned him he would report the bizarre circumstances of this test. Without missing a beat, Sang immediately requested to be registered for the Class C evaluation. Later that night, a girl clutching a bag of crystals met with Sang. She apologized, her voice trembling. "It's my fault Jam was attacked." Then came the confession. She was the one who had stolen the crystal jewels from the field.
At her words, Sang's expression turned to ice. Fear gripped her heart. Why did she tell the truth to a man capable of such things?
But Sang's voice was calm, cutting through her terror. "This isn't your fault," he said. "The blame belongs to those who targeted me and my family. You don't need to worry." He made it clear the stolen crystals were a problem between her and Silver Moon. He wouldn't interfere. "Besides," he added ominously, "you have no idea what Silver Moon and Hai Xian have done to you." The girl, shaking, pulled on her hat. With a quick word of thanks, she fled into the night. Back at the Hunter Association, the same dumbfounded employee faced Sang again. He had passed the evaluations for Class C and Class B. Sang stood. "I'm done for the day." "Done," the employee stammered. Just then, another official entered the room. "So, you've finally done it." The first employee asked if they knew each other. The second man nodded grimly. He identified Sang as the one hunter with a unique permission, the right to enter multiple hunting fields at once. The official continued, recalling the doctor who first evaluated Sang's unbelievable skill. He explained how the doctor was so shaken by Sang's ability that he couldn't stop telling everyone about the hunter who could be everywhere at once. "It's a mystery why you waited this long to rank up," the official noted. "From Class E to Class B in a single day, the entire hunter community is about to be turned upside down." A week later, the headlines were everywhere, all telling the story of the hunter they called Clanudo. The reports detailed his legendary promotion from E to B class in one day, calling it the fastest rank up in history. The world now knew the truth. His clones weren't illusions, they were terrifyingly real. Amidst the chaos, a payment of 5 billion arrived. Sang stared at the number, utterly shocked. Taewon explained it was his reward for a successful mission. Sang immediately protested. "This is far too much." Taewon shook his head. "I may have called it a favor, but it was a formal job. You must accept this." "Without you," he insisted, "that problem would have remained unsolved. No one else could have done it." "Visit the guild sometime," Taewon offered. The weight of the world lifted from Sang's shoulders, and he collapsed to the ground. It was over. His financial worries had vanished. He finally had more than enough money to save his sister. He knew what he had to do. He would use this fortune to hire the legendary S-rank healer known only as Bless. He could already see it. He'd grab the man's legs and beg with a desperation so intense, the healer would have no choice but to accept. Meanwhile, rage festered in the Silver Moon Guild. Their leader was furious over Kang and Ho's humiliating defeat. "Why did we seize all of the YOLO Guild's assets?" he roared. "Now we have no one left to process our crystals." The leader made a decision. They would destroy all the incriminating documents and bury their crimes for good. At that very moment, a woman named Yang Ju Chol appeared from the shadows. "For a leader, you're quite strong," she mused. "But a thief named Shikari has stolen something of mine." The Silver Moon leader suggested a calm discussion to clear up the misunderstanding, as he launched a deadly punch straight at her face. But her claws shot out, effortlessly parrying the devastating blow. Miles away, at the Canis Guild office, Junmo met with Taewon. He was there to thank him for sending agents to protect Sang's family. Taewon's eyes narrowed. He knew exactly who was behind the attack. Silver Moon. Junmo's grim expression confirmed it. This war, he declared, was far from over, especially with a man like Kang In-ho involved. Taewon's breath hitched. Kang Ho, the infamous vice leader of Silver Moon. He remembered the stories, how Sang had left the man permanently crippled. A dark connection was then brought to light. Years ago, Junmo had actually managed Kang Ho when he worked for the notorious Hong Guild. The shadowy alliance between the Hong and Silver Moon Guilds was an open secret. At that moment, Yang Ju Chowell burst into the Canis Guild office. She didn't mince words. Those bastards from Silver Moon were mass-producing crystals and jewels, funneling them directly to the Hong Guild. She slammed a folder onto the desk, filled with irrefutable proof. With a smirk, she looked at Junmo. "I've heard a lot about you. They call you a madman." In response, Junmo's gaze remained steady. "And I'm aware you just paid a visit to Silver Moon yourself. Just a quick stop to pick some things up," she quipped. But Taewon overheard a strange term and demanded to know more. DRP. Youngju Chowell explained it was a powerful body-enhancing drug, created from the very jewels they were discussing. The Hong Guild was at the center of its production, a substance that could shatter the world's balance. The tale then steps back, revealing the blood-soaked history of the hunter profession itself. The occupation was only deemed legal after the Great Catastrophe had finally burned itself out. Governments scrambled to create systems, controlling the hunting fields, imposing taxes eased on the massive profits, and officially purchasing the monster byproducts. While this new order brought a semblance of stability, not all hunters were willing to bend the knee. A rebellious faction of hunters rose up, rejecting mandatory registration and despising the new restrictions on their hunts. These outlaws forged their own clandestine society, operating from the shadows and using illegal weapons to defend their freedom and their fortune. It's revealed that Yangju Chaeol is a core member of this underground world. The scene then cuts to her entering a bar, carrying an unbelievable amount of crystals. The bartenders stared in absolute shock, their jaws dropping at the sheer value of the haul she carried.
Sang warned the woman against her reckless actions, but she simply smiled, explaining she'd found the items abandoned at the station. Sang's expression hardened into a deep frown. Suddenly, a group of menacing men appeared, cornering a woman named Wu Haiyan. "You're coming with us," their leader growled.
Their insignia was unmistakable. They belonged to a guild.
Wu Haiyan desperately looked to the bartender for help, but he averted his gaze, admitting the men had threatened his family.
Just then, another person stepped out from the crowd to intervene. One of the thugs sneered at the newcomer's formal attire. The newcomer confronted the man, his voice like ice. "Back off!" Before the thug could even reply, a fist crashed into his jaw. As he stumbled backward, he saw that Sang himself had arrived on the scene. The narrative then rips into a flashback, revealing the entire setup. Sometime in the past, Sang had assured Wu Haiyan that she was now under the protection of the GM agency. He had given her a mission attempt to sell the crystals she had gathered. He knew their enemies would take the bait. The scene changes to a secret location, where the master of the Haeyong Guild, a man named Shin, was being searched by guards.
"You have 10 minutes, he was told. He simply laughed as a heavy door was opened for him. Inside, a woman known as the Oracle was waiting.
She acknowledged his arrival without surprise. Shin asked if his presence was unexpected, or if she was merely toying with him. She stated that she knew what he wanted, and her answer had not changed. She advised him to abandon his greed and be content with his current life. Rage blazed in Shin's eyes. He reminded her of her own prophecy, that all the world's powerful figures would one day kneel before him. The Oracle explained that his great fate had been drastically altered, twisted by the influence of another person. Shin demanded to know who had dared to interfere with his destiny, but she claimed to have no knowledge of their identity. The scene snaps back to Sang, who was interrogating one of the captured men. Sang held up a phone and demanded the password, calling the man a fool. The captive refused, spitting that he would rather die. Sang assured the man he wouldn't be killed. Instead, he would be handed over to another group of sinister-looking individuals standing nearby. The captive began to sweat profusely. Meanwhile, Shinjin Wook, the leader of Haeyong's Team 1, received a call. The caller reported that he had successfully secured the crystals. Shinjin Wook instructed him to transport them to Factory 3. He then questioned why the caller's voice sounded off. But the man on the phone insisted everything was fine and his team was on the move.
Shinjin Wook concluded by reminding him to closely monitor the DRP production. Listening in on the entire conversation was Sang.
He remarked that everything was unfolding perfectly, then demanded the captive reveal the factory's location.
The man protested that he would be killed if he talked. In response, Sang addressed the group of menacing figures, announcing that the captive wanted to go with them.
At this, the men drew their knives. Faced with this new threat, the captive broke, finally revealing the factory's location. Sang gave his next command, send the coordinates to a man named Junmo. She offered her thanks for his help, but Sang remained impassive. Just then, a woman approached, proposing a little game.
She mentioned hearing news about the Clanudo, and wondered if that's why his companions all shared the same face.
Sang confirmed her suspicions. The woman then tested him, asking if he was paying attention, or if he even knew her name. Of course he did. She was the potion maker. The woman, Qin Wu Haiyan, laughed, playfully grabbing his collar before asking where his clones were. Sang explained they were otherwise occupied, as he'd left them to enjoy a barbecue while he handled some business. The moment the audio file from Sang's chat arrived, Junmo's blood ran cold. He recognized that voice instantly. Shinjin Wook, the mastermind behind all their recent suffering. The truth was now undeniable. Shinjin Wook and his syndicate were pulling the strings. Qin Wu Hin laid out the intelligence. The Haeyong Guild operated through 5 major crystal suppliers. With Silver Moon now crushed, Red Tail and other guilds, all rank B or higher, were still active. Junmo questioned why they didn't just strike Haesong directly, since selling crystals was illegal. She agreed it was a tempting idea, but pointed out the terrifying reality. Haesong was led by the single strongest hunter in all of Korea. The advice was clear. Junmo needed to be cautious and stay out of the shadows. He agreed, promising he would warn Sun Wu as well.
Taewon scoffed at the thought. Sun Wu needing a warning, as if anyone on Earth had the power to successfully kidnap him. Junmo then shot a message to Sang, confirming the material was a component for a dangerous drug known as DEP.
He ordered Qin Wu Hian to stay put at the office until the entire situation was contained. She wondered if the office that Silver Moon trashed had been repaired yet. Sang simply replied that she should prepare for a major surprise. Just then, Junmo arrived, ready to unveil their brand new headquarters to Qin Wu Hian. The place was completely transformed, with new meeting rooms and a fully equipped laboratory designed just for her. He even pointed out private rooms in the back where she could safely stay. But as she took in the incredible offer, Junmo's phone rang. In a heartbeat, his entire expression turned to stone. The call was an emergency alert from the hospital. Sang's presence was required immediately. Meanwhile, inside Silver Moon's decimated storage room, a man stood over a pool of blood and called out into the darkness. A grotesque, slime-like entity oozed from the ground, followed by several masked figures. The man demanded to know where Yang Ju-chil was. The answer came from the shadows he was being held in the Yolo Guild's basement. The masked man confirmed everything, including the crystals, had been stolen. Their enemies now knew the factory's location, a disaster likely caused by Sang's investigation. The lead figure then produced several vials, handing them to his subordinate. His orders were chilling. If his enemies wanted the drug so badly, he would gladly give it to them, even in its unperfected, monstrous state. Deep within the Yolo Guild basement, Yang Ju-chil was still bound and gagged when the slime creature materialized from the floor. The creature held a syringe filled with the drug, and without a word, plunged the needle straight into Yang's neck.
Elsewhere, Wei and his female companion were walking, plotting how to extract information from Yang.
She teased him, suggesting he was only tagging along to protect her from being kidnapped. But suddenly, she smelled something burning and saw a huge plume of smoke. They both broke into a desperate sprint toward the source. Amidst the raging inferno, they discovered a transformed monster. Nearby, a wounded civilian was collapsed on the ground. The man gasped out the story a monster had erupted from the basement, and the Class B squad was completely powerless against it. This meant the creature was at least a rank A threat.
A hunter on the scene was baffled, wondering how a monster could spawn without a gate.
But then she recognized a distinct scar on its face, and realized that beast was Yang Chil. In another part of the city, Kanjin lay weak and defenseless in a hospital bed. A masked assassin materialized beside him, preparing to inject him with the very same substance. But a woman holding a digital panel blocked his path, telling the intruder he wouldn't be allowed to have his way. The masked man simply vanished, instantly reappearing beside her, threatening to make her his new test subject. In that same instant, Sang arrived, slamming the man with a devastating shoulder tackle. As this new fight began, the battle against the monster Yang Chil raged on, tearing the city apart with every explosion. The fighters couldn't believe it. They knew Yang Chil as a powerful rank B hunter, not an unstoppable rank A monster.
That's when one of the women remembered a past conversation, a forbidden substance known as DMP,
A drug used for forced body enhancement. Looking at the monstrous Yang Chil, she finally understood. Their enemies had likely been targeting the Silver Moon Guild all along. This meant that Kanjin was also in mortal danger at the hospital. As it turned out, Siona, the woman with the digital panel, had contacted Juno, who in turn alerted Sang, allowing for his perfectly timed arrival. During the chaotic battle, the monster let out a terrifying roar. A female hunter summoned a spirit beast, a majestic nine-tailed fox, which fired a beam of pure energy that pierced the monster's chest. The beast roars back, unleashing a devastating fist. But in a flash of steel, a hunter named W intercepts, slicing the limb clean off. The monster strikes again, revealing a cybernetic arm and a terrifyingly familiar technique that sends them reeling. It was Yang Chil's signature move. Suddenly, a figure descends from above, his sword wreathed in roaring flames as he strikes the creature down. It's Gan, the master of the Soul Guild. He turns to the hunters, his voice stern, demanding to know where this monster came from. Back at the hospital, Sang calmly informs the masked man that needles are for doctors only. He lunges forward, but the man parries the attack, asking how Sang even knew he was there.
Sang's companion unleashes a torrent of fire, but the intruder snuffs out the flames with a single hand gesture.
That's when Sang descends from above. A devastating kick shatters the man's arm and sends him crashing to the floor.
Sang and his ally stand over their defeated foe. A young girl thanks Sang for arriving just in time.
Staring at Sang's immense power and his clones, the intruder finally understands. So this is how Kanjin was defeated. The clones glare down at him, now larger and far more menacing than before. The man smirks, realizing Sang is trying to bait him into a fight he cannot possibly win.
As he vanishes, he leaves a chilling promise. A man named Vegas is on his way to his sister's room. In the mana absorption intensive unit, a venomous threat against his family ignites a terrifying rage in Sang's eyes.
In the aftermath, the monster outbreak is officially closed by the masters of 3 guilds Soul, Yolo, and Kanis. A man named Gun tried to expose Haisong as the true culprit, but his voice was swiftly silenced. The official narrative was rewritten. It was just a simple containment breach, and Haisong had no involvement whatsoever.
Anyone else who dared to speak the truth found their efforts were utterly crushed.
Investigators later discovered the crystal's origin point, but the site was a ghost town. The EDP production facility had been wiped clean. For a while, tales of humanoid monsters continued to surface throughout the city, but they were always put down. Eventually, the sightings stopped, and the public forgot. The case was buried as an unsolved mystery. Sometime later, Sang meets with Junmo. He's decided they need a bodyguard.
Ever since the Silver Moon incident, he's realized one crucial thing: their safety must come before the efficiency of the hunt.
Junmo immediately guesses Sang plans to use his clones for the job.
Sang confirms it's his only choice, as he's saving every penny to hire an S-rank hunter for his sister's treatment.
He then lays out his master plan. One clone will remain at home, guarding his parents. 2 more will stay at the hospital with his sister, while a 4th stands guard at Junmo's agency. Another 2 clones will dedicate themselves to nonstop training. This leaves the original Sang free to move as he pleases.
When asked about the 7th and final clone, Sang reveals it's already been deployed to a very familiar location.
The Kindness Guild's training grounds, deep inside Odin's tower. There, his clone uses a megaphone to lure out every monster in sight. Invisible beasts charge from the shadows, followed by a horde of creatures identified as Spawn V30. The clone's response: it consumes a potion, unleashing a cataclysmic explosion. The scene then shifts to the grand opening ceremony of the Hunters Academy's Korean branch. Led by its president, Haku, the Academy's noble mission is to support low-rank hunters, offering free skills training and ways to boost their item drop rates. It promises that any hunter, regardless of their rank or talent, can have the chance to train alongside seasoned veterans. And for the top-performing student of the year, the Academy offers an elixir, though its true properties remain a mystery. Meanwhile, at a private gym, Sang and his clones are pushing themselves past their limits. But Sang has hit a plateau. The 250-kilogram dumbbells he's using are no longer enough to raise his stats.
He's searched everywhere, but he can't find heavier weights for sale, like 1-ton dumbbells.
While resting, Sang glances at a television, just in time to see a broadcast about the new academy. He's about to ignore it, until the announcer reveals the grand prize, a legendary elixir, coveted by hunters all over the world.
Even without knowing its specific effects, Sang's hunter instincts are immediately set ablaze.
The broadcast showcases the Hunter Academy, a majestic institution built to resemble a European castle. Its motto rings with a powerful promise: any student can learn new skills and shatter their limits, if they simply trust in the system.
Still wary, Sang questioned his acquaintance, Jumo, about the elixir prize. Was it truly real?
Jumo assured him it was. The Academy was dangling the legendary prize to lure talent from every corner of the globe. But Sang was suspicious. How could a mere branch academy possess an item of such mythical rarity? With a knowing look, Jumo corrected him. This wasn't just any institution. It was founded by George Lucas, the legendary figure known as the world's one and only jumper. But that only deepened Sang's confusion. Why would George Lucas, a titan who owned one of the world's largest corporations, bother founding an academy and giving away an elixir? Jumo admitted the true motive was a mystery, but he had a theory. It was likely a bold move to close the massive power gap between low and high-rank hunters. By empowering the rank-and-file hunters, they could drastically cut down on casualties whenever a gate opened. Jumo then leaned in, adding a crucial detail: the academy seemed to favor applicants with weaker, undeveloped skills.
A wave of regret washed over Sang. He'd worked so hard to raise his rank. But had he been too successful, Jumo quickly reassured him, saying he might still get in on other merits.
Then, Jumo pointed out Sang's greatest advantage: his laughably low-quality skills. His core abilities, Strong Strike and Magic Bullet, were both bottom-tier F rank. In contrast, a typical B-rank hunter would possess over 70 skills of various grades. Sang had clawed his way to B rank, relying almost entirely on his pure base stats and his clones. Clapping him on the shoulder, Jumo declared that this very lack of skills made him the perfect candidate. Then, as Sang recoiled, Jumo dropped a bomb, mentioning an admission route based on donations. Sang's eyes widened. He immediately thought of the prize money he'd earned from the Canis incident. His mind raced. Even if it cost 5 billion won, curing his sister with that elixir would be worth any price. Later, at a grand ceremony, the Academy's president took the stage. He then singled out Sang in front of everyone, declaring it an honor to have him. Flustered, Sang insisted he was nothing special. But the president praised his humility and then revealed Sang had donated a staggering 2.5 billion won to the Academy. Sang offered a polite thank you, but a cold suspicion settled in his gut. It felt like he'd simply bought his admission. He steeled his resolve. No matter the cost, even if it took 10 billion won, that elixir would be his. Whispers erupted around him as guests recognized him. That's Jong Sang Wu, the clone user.
Is he a clone himself? They murmured. Sang ignored them. With his current power, he was certain he could conquer this competition and see it through to the end.
The director then announced that 2 B-rank hunters would be joining the academy this year. Sang discovered the second hunter's identity was a closely guarded secret. But rumor had it this person was just as famous as he was. Instantly, Sang knew. This mysterious hunter was his rival, a direct obstacle standing between him and the elixir. During orientation, Professor Kang Haesik was introduced, teaching a class oddly named Basic Food Magic. Since it was just the first day, classes were dismissed early. Sang's mind was on the other B ranker, his focus unwavering. A little later, a student announced a welcoming party for all the new faces at a place called Bargory. Sang decided to go. It was the perfect chance to scout out his competition. He arrived to find the bar packed to the brim. In moments, he was surrounded, especially by a group of female students who recognized him instantly. "You're the clone user who took down that monster, right?" they gushed, their eyes filled with admiration for his heroic deeds. They begged him to create a clone, but Sang coolly declined, claiming his clones were already deployed on a critical mission. He used the opening to ask if they knew anything about the other B-rank hunter who had enrolled. They all shook their heads. The news online had only mentioned him. There was no word of anyone else. Sang's mind sharpened. The other hunter was deliberately staying in the shadows. This rival was not to be underestimated. He was likely not even here. Having learned what he could, he announced he was leaving. The women pleaded for him to stay, handing him a massive glass of alcohol. Without a word, Sang downed the entire drink, thanked them, and walked out, leaving them completely stunned. Thanks to his poison-resistant skill, the alcohol felt like nothing more than water. As he walked through the quiet campus, he felt a pang of nostalgia. His life had become a constant battle, with no time for the easy friendships of his past. Just then, a figure in a cap approached him, asking for directions to the student party. Sang pointed the way, noting the party was still going strong. The person wondered why he was leaving so early. "I don't really know anyone," Sang explained, turning to leave. But then he heard her voice clearly as she asked, "Then how about having a drink with me?" He froze. He knew that voice. The figure pulled back her cap. It was Yan, his former student. "You should recognize me, right?" she said with a small smile. "Yan, what are you doing here?" Sang asked, completely bewildered. She revealed she was one of the new students. His mind reeled. "Does that mean you failed the university exam, the one I helped you study for?" Yan expertly dodged the question. "It's getting cold out here," she said, pulling her jacket tighter. "So, about that drink?" Sang knew he had to play along to get the intel he desperately needed. The woman asked for a drink, so he cut to the chase, suggesting she must have failed her test. But she immediately shut him down, clarifying that she'd passed her exam with ease. Sang was baffled. If she'd already secured a university spot, why on earth was she at the academy? She explained that becoming a hunter was her true dream. University was just to satisfy her parents. Her personal quest was always to earn a hunter's license after graduation. This new academy presented a golden opportunity. She had to fight to convince her parents, who warned her of the dangers. But her iron will persisted until they finally relented. Then she turned the tables, a playful glint in her eye. "So what's your story, Professor?" Sang flinched, embarrassed. "Don't call me that," he insisted. "I'm not in that role anymore." The woman pointed out that since they enrolled together, he wasn't her senior. With a smirk, she playfully gave him a different nickname. She watched his discomfort with amusement before telling him to look at her. After several drinks flowed, the alcohol finally took its toll on her. She demanded another round, but Sang told her she'd had enough. She was resting her head on the table when she suddenly shot up, asking for his new phone number. With his number secured, she smiled triumphantly. "Now you have no excuse," she slurred, before promptly passing out cold. Sang paid the tab for their drinks. Sometime later, the woman slowly regained consciousness, finding herself being carried on his back. Disoriented, she asked why she was on his back, wondering if she had fallen asleep. "Are we going home?" she mumbled. Sang confirmed she was awake, explaining that she had passed out right there at the counter. The woman complained that the world was spinning and she couldn't walk, so she clung to Sang as he carried her through the night. While on his back, she asked why he hadn't contacted them for months, saying he could have found a way, even with a new number. She confessed that her original plan had been to smack him out of pure anger, but she couldn't bring herself to do it after seeing his face again. "I had a great time with you," she finally admitted. Sang replied that he was enrolled in the academy to accomplish a very specific goal. He then confirmed that he had enjoyed himself as well. He called it the best day he'd had in the last 6 months, adding that the night was still young. He elaborated on his sudden disappearance, describing himself as fundamentally lazy. He feared his determination would crumble to dust if he returned to his old lifestyle, leading him back to the same mistakes and regrets. Believing that people don't change so easily, he had torched every bridge to his past to maintain his unwavering focus. He then assured her that she was still important to him, and handed her a cap. As they reached her home, the woman admitted she had completely misunderstood his intentions. Sang told her to put on the cap, saying, "I'll forgive you." This time, as he turned to leave, she warned him, "Don't expect me to forgive you again." Elsewhere, a man named Haisong contemplates the massive waves Sang is creating in the world. Nearby, a person in a white mask apologizes, reporting that the Nudo clone was stronger than they ever imagined, calling the clone a monster. Hyong mused that their target had been the legendary Jong Sang Wu, and that he should have asked for an autograph. Another figure appeared beside Hyong, asking why the lights were off. Hyong ignored the question, cutting straight to business.
Are all preparations complete?
He informed the person that their mission at the academy would begin the following week, demanding results that would justify the immense effort it took to enroll them. The individual confirmed his understanding. This person is revealed to be Shinjuni, Hyung's own son. He promises his father that he will not bring him disappointment. Haesong then gave his son a single, chilling order: acquire the elixir. A week later at the academy, Sang's class is preparing for elemental magic.
A female classmate is already in the room when the professor makes his entrance.
He announces their first lesson will be the fireball skill, which he calls a versatile and popular type of magic.
Sang, however, was lost in his own thoughts, questioning if he even needed to learn this kind of flashy magic.
He recalled learning the strong strike skill through brutal physical conditioning. How could they possibly teach a magic ability? And that's where the chapter leaves us. So, tell me, what did you think about this manhwa? Be honest now. Drop your rating from 0 to 10 down in the comments. If you enjoyed this recap, don't forget to smash that like button and subscribe for more insane stories like this one.